The wonderful adventures of the Warhammer elf. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Legitimate Landing. In the setting sun, the faces of the elves were as dazzling as the afterglow of autumn, especially Rohan standing at the bow. With the blessing of the characteristics of Mistwalker, the humans with fragile souls only felt that Rohan was like a gloomy prince. After receiving the news, the female nobles who came to the Doctor Watch were even more obsessed with the elves wearing them, and their minds were full of heretical ideas of Slanesh. It's really elves. The legend is true. They are so handsome. If I can adopt one and take it home to spend the night, I would even be willing to die. Be careful, no one knows whether these elves are really friendly. Looking at the women posing on the shore and the men waiting in a serious manner, the eyes of the Durachi were without any emotion. Want to take us home? Are lowly humans worthy? If it weren't for the adults' repeated warnings, these wild warriors would have brandished rapiers and ropes, tied up these humans, and brought them back to the Black Ark to dispose of them at will. At that time, let's see who will raise whom. Rohan also felt the fanatical gazes from all around him, but he had long been accustomed to it. When he was first led into Nagaland by the Witch King 100 years ago, his appearance attracted the attention of many followers of the cult of pleasure. Recalling that unbearable past, Rohan was filled with emotion. At that time, poor Rohan had been drugged and tied to the altar of Asati, the god of desire and temptation. If it weren't for the timely appearance of the system and the protection of the Witch King, poor Rohan would have been forced to combine his soul and flesh with those pink skeletons. Just as Rohan was still reminiscing, a fat figure stood out from the crowd with a disgusting smile on his face and said, "Welcome, Mr. Elf. I'm the Lord of Salamport, Count Carmen." Looking at the other party's greasy hand, Rohan pretended not to see it and said, "I'm Admiral Rohan. I think Sir Ham has told you the needs of the elves, right? Ahahaha, I have received your little gift. We can agree to all your requests, but it may not be enough." Count Carmen rubbed his hands. 500 gold coins could actually make him a fortune, but he was more greedy than Rohan thought. After all, according to legend, the floors in the elves' hometown are made of gold, the sky is inlaid with various crystals, and there are all kinds of rare birds and jewels. It's a pity that Count Carmen will never know that there is no wealth he dreams of in the elves' hometown. There is only endless killing. Rohan understood what Carmen meant, but he didn't want to endure this greedy fat man anymore, so he said to Carmen directly, "I will remember your greed, short-lived creature. When I meet your king, I will tell him that you dared to insult the elves' messenger like this. I will come again tomorrow, and then I will see what you humans promised before." Then he ignored Count Carmen and other nobles whose faces changed drastically and returned to the Black Ark with the guards. On the ship, Dario asked curiously, "Sir, are we really messengers sent by the Witch King?" Rohan glanced at the Mangu adjutant who hadn't figured it out yet and explained, "Of course not. This is just a way to improve the efficiency of mortal nobles. Anyway, they don't know the Witch King. Then what should we do when we meet the human king?" "Simple. They want diplomatic documents. Can't we just write one for them?" The Witch King wanted the wealth from the other world that Rohan brought back to Nagaland, which was of course no problem. If Rohan can completely occupy this world, then he can bring in supplies and soldiers continuously. In other words, in this transaction, although Rohan needs to hand over half of the looting within 50 years, the cross-world trade is an infinite wealth that can make money. Tomorrow will be a very interesting day. Yes. The next day, on the avenue leading to the suburbs, dense pedestrians and carriages blocked the roadside, and a road was cleared under the coordination of human soldiers. A teenager pushed a small cart full of apples and looked at the people lined up in a long line. He couldn't help asking, "What's going on? Everyone is stuck here?" "It seems that the soldiers are clearing the road. I guess that the great noble is here. Otherwise, why would they mobilize so many troops?" When he heard that it was a great noble, the teenager instantly lost interest. For those gluttons who are in high positions and corrupt, the teenager wishes that more of them could die. Due to the greed of Count Carmen, Salamport, as a trade and shipping center, has to pay a large amount of taxes every year, but the ordinary people there are unlucky. Although the land in Salem is fertile, the poor farmers have to bear the same taxes as merchants. The boy was bored, so he took an apple from the cart and squatted on the side of the road to eat it. Get out of the way. Don't block the road. A large army is coming. All of you get out of the way. The soldiers shouted in a distant voice, and the boy squatting by the tree couldn't help but curse in a low voice. Damn noble lackeys, they only know how to bully us farmers. However, just when the boy thought that other passers-by around him would agree with him, he found that the surroundings suddenly became silent. Empty, 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 empty. The neat footsteps accompanied by the sound of armor rubbing entered the boy's ears, giving the boy who was still squatting on the ground a strong sense of shock. The boy hurriedly stood up. Could it be that he had just insulted the king's royal knights? Exclamation mark. My god. Looking at the elf army passing by on the avenue not far away, the boy was surprised and speechless like the others around him. It was Rohan and his soldiers who were heading to the private territory they had just bought under the guidance of a team of knights. Rohan, riding on a white elf horse, leaned over slightly, picked up an apple from the boy's cart, and asked, "Whose is this?" "Ah, sir, this is mine." The boy finally reacted and hurriedly walked out of the crowd. Rohan looked at the good quality apples on the cart, took out a gold coin from his arms, and threw it to the boy, saying, "I want the apples. Take your cart and follow my team." "Okay, sir." Rohan didn't care about this little episode and returned to the team while chewing the apple. Several human knights came forward in an instant with a flattering smile on their faces and said, "Sir, there is no need to be so troublesome to treat a mud-legged peasant. We will help you get the gold coins back later. No need, this is a reward for the child. Please help protect this child to go home safely. I'm worried that the scum among you humans will bully a child who is powerless." Hearing this, the knights nodded awkwardly and then hurried away, recalling those subordinates who were going to follow the boy. After all, a gold coin is a lot of money for a knight, and they were indeed greedy just now. P.S. Chapter 2. Not a drop left or two. Chapter 27. The lady arrives. The capital of the kingdom of Cloist, Lion Lake City. In the palace hall, the old king, wearing a sword and golden armor, asked the painter beside him speechlessly, "How long will it take to finish this damn painting? You should learn to be considerate of an old man. Please pay attention, your majesty. This is your portrait that will be passed down to future generations, and it must be carefully crafted." The painter's emotionless voice made the old king roll his eyes and sighed. "Lucky, painter, you met a good king. If it were another king, he might have chopped off your head. Thank you for your kindness, your majesty." Just as the king was arguing with the painter, a knight rushed in with a letter in his hand and shouted with a horrified look, "Your majesty, an urgent letter from Port Saran, with Count Carmen's war handprint on it." Hearing the knight's words, the old king's face changed, and he didn't care about the portrait anymore. He rushed to the steps and snatched the envelope from the knight's hand. After confirming the news on the envelope was true, the old king handed the envelope to the general, who came after hearing the news with a strange look on his face. After taking the envelope and reading it, the general frowned, put on his monocle to confirm it repeatedly, and then looked at the king in disbelief and asked, "Elf expedition? Is Count Carmen serious? I hope this is a joke. My dear general, I'm very glad that we agree." The old king returned to the throne and asked the painter, who was packing up his brushes, "Is today a special holiday? April Fool's Day? Or Halloween?" After getting the painter's denial, the king took off his armor and looked at the general and said, "Since it is not a joke, then we may have to accept what Count Carmen said, that the legendary elves have appeared. Please forgive my offense, your majesty. I think someone has deceived Count Carmen. It is impossible that there are no elves, let alone any islands floating on the sea." The old king did not comment on his general's stubbornness. Sitting down slowly on the throne and looking at the bracelet left by the queen on the table, the old king sighed. "In order to fight with my brothers for the throne, I missed Isabel's birth. In conquering Albion, I missed the last meeting with Marine. Now that there is finally no war, and I'm ready to make it up to Isabel, a group of elves comes again. Your majesty, Her Royal Highness the princess will understand." The general looked at the somewhat dejected old man on the throne, touched the white beard on his face, and also fell into a state of emotion. The old king closed his eyes, and after a long silence, he opened his tired eyes and said, "If those elves want to see me, then let them come. I want to see what these noble and elegant creatures in the legend can do to me." Outskirts of Salamport, several human knights came to Rohan cautiously and reported, "Sir, according to the order of the Earl, the surrounding area belongs to the elves." "Yes, thank you for leading the way, you can leave." Rohan looked at the open space in front of him with satisfaction. It was not far from the mainland, and next to it were endless forests and lakes. The geographical location was quite advantageous. With the arrival of the Durachi warriors, this place officially became Rohan's first piece of land in the other world. Just as Rohan took the land purchase permit, with the royal seal from the human knight, a series of system prompts sounded in his ears. Ding. It is detected that the host has successfully established a colony in the other world, completing the feature, Pioneer. The system unlocks a new feature, Space-Time Guard Pool, which will randomly refresh 3 different world items every week. The system unlocks a new feature, Colonial Buildings, which can build special world buildings and recruit local soldiers or resource points. Hearing the good news from the system, Rohan's heart was full of tax evasion. His original plan was to spread the belief of the Lady of the Mist, suppress the local pagan forces, and achieve indirect control. The local god of this world, God, has never been seen by anyone even in legends. Since it is also a belief, why should we believe in a god who has never appeared? Isn't a Lady of the Mist with white skin, beautiful face and long legs attractive when there are enough humans who believe in the Lady of the Mist? Aren't all the remaining people who are unwilling to obey Rohan's orders evil pagans? Rohan touched the silver leaf on his chest. He believed that Lady Mist would not give up the faith that was delivered to her. After jumping off his horse, Rohan came to the lake, knelt on one knee holding the silver leaf, and began to send a pious message to Rajlia. "Rohan, boss, are you there? Can you help cut a knife on my colonization progress bar?" At this time, Rajlia's consciousness was traveling in this continent, looking at the scenery of the new world in amazement. There is no trace of chaos. This world is not only remote and far away, but also so safe. Just as Rajlia was busy checking this pure land, Rohan's PHS suddenly rang. Faced with Rohan, a believer who constantly brings surprises to herself, Rajlia was a little curious about what he wanted to talk to her about. Shouldn't he be busy thinking about how to get wealth from humans now? After answering the message without hesitation, Rajlia heard Rohan's evil little plan. Let human believers fight the war, so that you can take over this world at the lowest cost? Rajlia studied Rohan's plan carefully, and found that it was indeed feasible. Although it was a bit unfair to the humans in this world, a stable world of faith was also what she longed for. She only needed to pretend to be a charlatan a few times, and Rohan would take the initiative to do all the rest of the dirty work. Rajlia's consciousness came to the lakeside, and looking at Rohan who was kneeling on one knee by the lake and praying devoutly, she couldn't help laughing. What an evil man. But I like it. A faint mist instantly enveloped the entire lake, and a holy light fell from the sky and landed in the middle of the lake. Both the human knights who had not left yet and the young man who was transporting fruit were attracted by this sudden vision. Then, all the humans present opened their eyes wide, staring in amazement at the figure that slowly walked out of the holy light, a head of silver white hair that reached her waist, which could not hide her graceful figure, a pair of bright golden eyes with a slight smile, a light veil covered her appearance, but no one would question how stunning her beauty would be under the veil. The green oak leaves covered the girl's graceful figure like fine silk, and her body was covered by a layer of thick fog. Only the silver leaves on her neck were emitting a holy light to the surroundings. Rohan also widened his eyes, looking at the green-clothed girl who was floating towards him, and couldn't help but muttered, "Ms. Misty, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 28. Don't worry, I'll help. Not only Rohan, but even the surrounding Durachi did not expect the Lady of the Mist to suddenly come, and they all saluted her. The girl floated in front of Rohan, looked at Rohan who was looking at her blankly, and smiled. "My believer, why are you so rude? Madam, you came in person?" It's just a temporary incarnation of mine to commend your extraordinary achievements. Not far away, the human knight and the fruit boy looked at the two people talking by the lake and couldn't help swallowing. Because the Lady of the Mist had erected a barrier, the surrounding humans didn't know what they were talking about. However, this did not affect their surprise and admiration for the girl on the lake. Fearing impoliteness, the knights did not approach rashly, but stood far away and said in suppressed excitement, "What is that? The god of the elves? So beautiful. If it was in the past, my mind would be full of dirty thoughts when I saw her, but when I saw her I feel I was purified. Woo, woo, woo. Why am I not an elf? I also want to be handsome, and I want to have such a beautiful god." Although the human knights tried to lower their voices, Rohan still clearly heard the human's words of praise, so he said to the girl, "Madam, the plan I proposed before. Do what you want, little one. I will leave a clone in this world to prevent the native gods of this world from hurting you." Since the two were talking inside the barrier and there was no need to worry about being eavesdropped, Rajlia's tone was more casual. Rohan looked at the girl floating on the lake and asked curiously, "Madam, does the so-called god really exist in this world? Maybe. I have found the sky island you mentioned. If the fairy tale you told that day is true, then maybe the place where the local gods live is on the Sky Island." Upon hearing this, Rohan was instantly a little uneasy. What they are going to do in the future, to put it nicely, is to spread faith. To put it bluntly, is to plunder the believers on which the local gods depend for survival. Although Rohan is now confident that he has some strength, he is far from being an opponent of a god who has been believed in for thousands of years. Moreover, the lady only left a word about the clone, and the strength is good enough to bewitch the ignorant natives. If he encounters a local god, Rohan can only ignore the risks and forcibly take his men with him. Sensing Rohan's in a worry, Lady Mist couldn't help but roll her eyes and said, "Please, have some faith in your god, okay? Don't worry, the clones I left behind are strong enough to resist the erosion of chaos, not to mention the local gods who can't even travel through the world. Don't worry, I'll help when necessary." Seeing Rajlia say this, Rohan was relieved, but still stared with big eyes and asked, "Then why don't you just stay? What if you come too late? Then you can only see the corpse of your lovely believer." Looking at Rohan pretending to be cute, Rajlia was angry and amused, and finally sighed for the sake of her image. "If you really die, I will resurrect you. Haven't you always wanted to be the chosen one? It's just right for you. And I have more than one believer. The believers of Iris also need my protection, and it's impossible for them to stay here forever." Hearing Rajlia say this, Rohan had to give up helplessly. There was no way. Although he was an outstanding licker now, he was not the strongest after all. Perhaps only when Rohan really becomes a chosen one can the lady stay in a certain world for Rohan alone. After confirming the division of spoils in this world, Rajlia's consciousness left with satisfaction. As the consciousness left, the girl's body gradually faded and finally merged with the surrounding mist. Rohan stood up and said to the human knights who were watching all this in a daze, "Human warriors, our god has issued a decree to build a temple nearby. Can you help us find enough workers? Of course, the elves will give you enough compensation, 2,000 elven gold coins." The human knights were stunned and then immediately reacted and fought for their families. Of course, my family will contact the best engineering team in Salamport and will never let the great elven god be ashamed. No, my family just happens to have an idle engineering team recently. Let me do it. Get out of the way. I'm the second son of Baron Eaton, and this honor belongs to the Eaton family. Hearing the name of the Eaton family, the knights who were still fighting for each other fell silent in an instant. As the second largest family in Salamport, the financial resources of the Eaton family are comparable to those of the city lord, Count Carmen, and the other knights did not dare to provoke each other. Rohan looked at the knight who walked out of the crowd with curiosity. The gold plate armor and the sword inlaid with gems on his body all showed that he had a distinguished background. The knight's face was full of pride. Only when he came in front of Rohan did this pride turn into respect. He performed the standard knight's etiquette and said, "Respected elf lord, I'm Russell Eaton from the Eaton family. Hello, proud human knight. Building a temple requires a lot of building materials. How long will your family need?" As long as you are willing, my family can now summon the engineering team of the whole city to serve you. Russell's face was full of pride for his family. He made a promise directly. Of course, we can start the construction immediately with only 1,500 gold coins. This is the sincerity of our Eaton family. Although he was the insignificant second son of the family, Russell believed that Baron Eaton would agree with him. After all, he believed that the goodwill from the elves and the elven gods would definitely be more valuable than 500 gold coins. Rohan thought for a moment and understood Russell's plan, but he didn't care about the intrigues between humans. Then he nodded and said, "In that case, then I'll trouble you. Thank you for your trust, you won't be disappointed." The next day, on the Black Ark, Rohan lay on the soft big bed, looking at the system panel in the air and said, "System, introduce the use of time and space card pool." Ding. The host can spend gold coins to buy 3 random items from another world. It will refresh once a week and there is a chance of duplication. Can the fueling potion increase my chances of getting good stuff? Ding. Time and space card pool is not affected by external objects. I wish the host good luck. Look at the face. Rohan got up and looked at himself in the mirror. Well, look at this fair skin. It shouldn't be a non-African. Then Rohan was relieved, put his finger on the card pool, and picked up 3 cards with a card and said, "Start drawing." Ugh. A sharp pain suddenly came from his chest. Rohan hurriedly ripped open his clothes in pain, and then he saw that the originally dim skaven mark suddenly lit up with a strange green light. Warning. Feature Curse of the Horned Rat is activated. Luck index -50%. Rohan. PS. It is said that the votes on Tuesday are crucial. XDM. How about giving me some? Chapter 29. The Holy Light is deceiving you. Luck value -50%. Are you serious? Rohan threw the card in his hand to the ground in a rare moment of incompetence. He always felt the laughter of the Horned Rat echoing in his ears. You know, Curse of the Horned Rat has become a characteristic and has become one with Rohan. Does he have to endure the fact that he has to become a poor man every week when he draws cards? Looking at the 3 cards glittering on the ground, Rohan sighed deeply and picked them up again. Let's talk about this curse later. Let's see if there are any good things first. As the light on the card gradually faded, Rohan saw 3 things slowly appearing on the card. Primary life potion, restore plus 18% HP, priced at 800 gold coins. Two-handed greatsword, knight sword forged by human craftsman, priced at 5 gold coins. Incendiary bomb asterisk 10. Molotov cocktail, priced at 10 gold coins. Rohan blinked and took the last 2 cards back into the system without hesitation. What a joke, a human sword that is far inferior to the elves' weapons, and a firebomb that bears to sell for 10 gold coins. A well-made dark elf rapier only needs 50 silver coins in Nagaland, and there are discounts for large quantities. As for the earthen firebombs like Molotov cocktails, Durachi will not even look at them. Every year, the looting teams in the Sigma Empire bring back tens of thousands of heavy firebombs commonly used by witch hunters, which are powerful enough to cover an area of dozens of square meters. However, except for some shadows and Black Ark pirates with special needs, no one in Durachi is interested in such mortal weapons. The enemies faced by the Dark Elves are Lizardmen, High Elves and distant Bretonnians. The scales of Lizardmen can effectively resist firebombs. The armor of High Elves can also protect them from the erosion of flames, and the Bretonnian. The Swift Knights can't do that, and it's too wasteful to bully the old farmers. Therefore, except for the primary life potion that is worth buying and studying by Rohan, the others are garbage. Thinking that all this was because of the damned Horned Rat, Rohan's back teeth itched, and he cursed in a low voice, "Dirty rat, one day I will attack the demon rat waste city and burn you all with the fire." Gently crushing the card in his hand, Rohan saw that his total assets on the system panel were -800, and a small red potion bottle appeared in Rohan's hand. Looking at the red potion bottle in his hand, the potion that can restore 18% of the blood volume, although the effect is not as good as the continuous healing potion Rohan is using now, but it is an instant recovery. After hesitating for a moment, Rohan opened the lid and smelled it, and then said in shock, "Wheat. There is another flower. Why does it smell like salt? This is not cooking." From the Elder Scrolls 5, wheat plus blue mountain flower equals life potion. Rohan himself can do alchemy, so he can also make potions to restore wounds. But usually the alchemical materials related to the recovery of injuries require materials related to life vitality. For example, high-level recovery potions use dragon blood, but in order to save costs, Rohan used a little blood of a manticore plus bear. Although the effect is much weaker, it can be provided to ordinary soldiers. But the potion in front of him completely overturned Rohan's decades of alchemy knowledge. It's amazing. I didn't expect it to be like this. Nagaland has never lacked wheat and salt, because there are slaves farming. And now all we need to do is find materials that can replace that kind of flour. Then Rohan can fully imagine what kind of benefits such a low-cost potion will bring. Rohan stood up and looked out the window and turned his gaze to the port of Seren, a prosperous city close at hand. After the latest temple is built, I will go and see how far the plot of the original book has progressed. The giants on the Sky Island and their wealth will become souvenirs that Rohan brings back to Nagaland. 1 month later, Port Seren. Have you heard that the temple built by the elves is almost completed and humans are welcome to visit? Really? I heard that several knights claimed to have seen the real god. Does God really exist in the world? If the elf god really exists, does God really exist? The boy who bought apples pushed the cart and listened to the arguments of pedestrians. He couldn't help but think of the elf girl he saw by the lake. On the streets recently, people were discussing about the elf god. Since the news that the Eaton family had summoned craftsmen from all over the city to help the elves build the temple spread, more and more people began to think, do gods really exist? The knights who were responsible for escorting the elves all swore that they had seen the elf god, which made the people start discussing. Although the priests of the church tried to suppress this heresy, it was useless. They believed in God, but no one had really seen him for thousands of years, and the elves had just started to build the temple, and their god came. In such a comparison, even some devout nobles began to hesitate and went to the church to seek answers. Although the priests have been emphasizing the glory of God, these arguments that have been preached for thousands of years can no longer convince people. As the news spread, both beggars on the roadside and upper-class nobles began to pay attention to the temple that the elves were still building. They all hoped to witness the holy light of the gods with their own eyes, even if this god was not the one they believed in. Faced with such a situation, the bishops in the monastery were anxious and tried to send the dead soldiers loyal to God to destroy the elves' temple. However, all the dead soldiers sent out lost contact, and it was not until the next day that a dead body with no wounds and a smile on its face was seen at the gate of the monastery. With the protection of the Silver Mist warriors, no human could enter the temple with malice. Time soon came to the first day of the second month. The entire Salam port was deserted, and people flocked to the vicinity of the elves' residence, ready to see the glory of the gods. At Rohan's request, the Durachi warriors lined up to form a shield wall to keep these humans out of the residence. Rohan, wearing phoenix armor, stood in front of the built temple, attracting the hearts of countless noble girls. Looking at the empty statue pedestal in the center, Rohan prayed to the Lady of the Mist in his heart. Madam, are you ready? Wait, let me touch up my macube. Okay. After confirming that there would be no mistakes in the Lady of the Mist's clone, Rohan stood on the steps, raised his right hand with the ring of guidance, and said in the elven language that was incomprehensible to mortals, from today on, the light of the Lady of the Mist will also shine on mankind. Warriors under the mist, obey the lady's orders and spread the holy light to the whole world. P.S. Post one chapter at a time. It's more relaxing this way, CAC. Chapter 30, Crazy Human Believer. Rohan raised his staff that he had found from somewhere and shouted. The guidance ring on his hand emitted bursts of blue light, causing the people around him to exclaim. For half a month, Rohan had been discussing with the clone of Lady Misty how to perform this show. In the end, one person and one god decided to cast a large-scale spell to scare the natives of this world. Boom, the clouds in the sky continued to gather, and lightning continued to cross the sky, shaking the weak hearts of mortals. Seeing this, Rohan raised his staff high, and a blue beam of light shot straight into the sky, and the whole person was bathed in a sea of magic visible to the naked eye. People looked at Rohan in horror. They had never seen magic before, but they were all frightened by this blue magic circle that reached the sky. Even the port of Salem, several kilometers away, could see the strange phenomenon here that shocked the world. Rohan glanced at the frightened humans and nodded with satisfaction. These deceived people didn't know that Rohan's beam of light looked very bluffing, but in fact it was just a flower stand without any threat. Because he needed to scare the natives, Rohan had been thinking about what magic would look the most spectacular. In the end, Rohan chose the most powerful magic he knew, the Great Whirlpool. Although Rohan would never be able to cast a real Great Whirlpool in his life, but with the help of Lady of the Mist, it was still possible to make a small whirlpool shell with the appearance of a large whirlpool. Rohan gritted his teeth, feeling the magic power that was being rapidly consumed in his body. Even if it was just the shell of a small whirlpool, it was too much for Rohan. So he inserted the staff into the empty altar without hesitation. The blue runes spread instantly. Looking at Rohan, who was a little exhausted, Rajlia knew it was time for her to go on stage. A holy light fell from the sky. Rajlia's incarnation followed Rohan's advice, holding a crystal bottle and a thin willow branch in his hand, and stepped on the colorful clouds, and fell from the sky. The onlookers had already been intoxicated by the visual feast brought by Rohan. Looking at the girl falling from the sky, they did not react for a while. Looking at the crowd who had no reaction, Rajlia was a little panicked. It was her first time to do such a thing, and she was obviously a little nervous. Among the crowd, the boy who was selling fruits before was the first to react and shouted, "It's the goddess. The goddess has come." Then he knelt on one knee with a fanatical face and began to pray to the girl in the sky. The people around him reacted and looked at the sacred girl floating in the air and knelt down to worship crazily. Whether it was the noble lords who were high above or the most humble beggars on the roadside, they all sent their devout faith to the girl in the air. People cried and looked at the goddess, praying that she could help them realize their wishes. Most of them said commonplace things like good health and good luck. Of course, some of the shouts made Rohan feel excessive. "Goddess, please bless me with endless wealth. Goddess, please give me the power of God. Goddess, marry me." Rohan's head was full of black lines. He now knew why people in this world had never seen God. If it were him, if he heard such greedy demands from humans, he would choose to find a quiet place. In midair, the incarnation of Rajlia was also very angry. Who is she? She is the Lady of the Mist, the goddess of Ivris, a true god from heaven. She is indeed gentle to her believers, but that does not mean she will allow mortals to speak rudely to her. As the strongest believer of the Lady of the Mist in this world, Rohan can naturally feel the anger in the lady's heart. Rohan raised the ring of guidance and waved it fiercely at the crazy crowd. The angry Rajlia took the opportunity to strengthen Rohan's ring, and Rohan felt a huge energy instantly flew out of his hand. The blue magic shield instantly turned into lightning, splitting the humans who made blasphemous remarks into powder. The originally crazy crowd suddenly quieted down, looking at the elves around them with unfriendly faces, and then they remembered that the seemingly amiable girl in front of them was a true god. Looking at the trembling crowd, Rohan's handsome face was straight with eyebrows and glared. "What do you think you are doing? Short-lived. Lady Mist is kind enough to allow you to worship, and you dare to speak rudely? Lady Mist, we are wrong. Please forgive the ignorant people." Hearing Rohan's words, people looked at the figure in the sky who turned around and seemed to be ready to leave and hurriedly cried and begged for forgiveness. Seeing that humans were so sensible, Rohan breathed a sigh of relief, and it was stable. In midair, Rajlia's clone also began to perform. The girl slowly turned around and looked at the mortals kneeling on the ground with pity in her eyes and threw the thin willow branches in her hand to the crowd. Dewdrops turned into holy light visible to the naked eye, pouring on the most sincere humans. Those who were bathed in holy light looked at their bodies in surprise, and they could feel a force nourishing their bodies. People around could clearly see that the defects of the people bathed in holy light were being repaired, and their thin bodies were also becoming fuller. Is it a blessing? No, it's just a simple advanced healing technique. But under Rohan's suggestion, Rajlia also learned a lot of bad things, and those who were bathed in the holy light were the weak. Because compared to making the strong stronger, being able to make the weak become strong can better reflect the power of the Lady of the Mist. Praise the Lady of the Mist. I'm recovered. My eyes have become better. You are my god. My congenital lameness has been cured. Please let me become your believer." Those who were blessed knelt on the ground more enthusiastically, and the crowd around them looked at the blessed people with jealousy, and also knelt on the ground, hoping to be blessed. Looking at the enthusiastic humans under the stage, Rohan's mouth curled up a smile. Success. Everything is going according to Rohan's plan, and there is not even a mistake. A few weeks later, Rohan slowly opened his eyes, looked at the two beautiful noble sisters who were still sleeping on the bed, and couldn't help yawning. Since the news of the temple officially spread, nobles and people have sent tributes to Rohan every day. After confirming that Lady Mist did not need these worldly things, Rohan accepted them all and used them to enrich his own treasury. In just a few weeks, Rohan received tens of thousands of gold coins, as well as a variety of precious jewels and rare animals. And for some reason, the Durachi soldiers patrolling near the elves station always met some lost human girls, which confused Rohan's simple soldiers. How can there be a service that is free and delivered to your door? Is it so good? When these soldiers reported this strange thing to Rohan, they found that the situation on Rohan's side was even more outrageous. Every day, a noble woman who was lost in the temple would appear at the door of Rohan's room. Slowly sitting on the bed, looking at the room full of uncounted financial and human girls, Rohan couldn't help but sigh. No wonder humans are scrambling to be priests. This is really a lucrative job. P.S. Woo woo woo. My family thinks that my novels don't make money, and they want me to learn to do macro business and die. Chapter 31 Human Capital, Lion Lake City. The decadent life makes people addicted, but Rohan soon woke up from the gentle country. With the humans' reverence for the Lady of the Mist, Rohan easily collected tens of thousands of gold coins. But he still needs to return to the Warhammer world to develop the army and prepare for military conquest. After opening the window and dispelling all the indescribable smells in the room, Master Reluo began to prepare for the Lion Lake City. This time, in addition to meeting the King of Humans as an envoy, he also needs to check the direction of the movie plot. If the plot has ended, then Rohan can only consider how to usurp this world with a strategy. But in case the plot has not yet begun, or even earlier, then Rohan has enough time to start planning. The magic beans leading to the Sky Island and the crown that controls the giants. Rohan must ensure that one of these two things is in his hands before the plot begins. After all, in Rohan's plan, those giants must reach the human world and defeat the army of the human kingdom. During this period, Rohan needs to find a way to move the giant wealth on the Sky Island to the Black Ark, while ensuring that humans will not get the crown first. After Rohan moves the wealth back to the Black Ark and obtains the giant's crown, he will appear as a hero to save the world. In this way, he can legitimately spread the faith of the Lady of the Mist and secretly turn this world into his own colony. Perfect. After putting on the armor, Rohan came to the square of the elf station. Dario is reorganizing the army. This time, when he goes to Lion Lake City, Rohan will bring the only team of Silver Mist Hunters and 4 teams of Silver Mist Guards. After 2 weeks of waiting, Rohan has converted all his fierce spearmen into Silver Mist Guards. The task of defending the Black Ark and the Elf Station was handed over to the remaining Durachi warriors and the newly recruited human servants. That's right, after 2 months of tossing, Rohan can finally recruit human soldiers. Although he can only recruit some low-level light infantry and auxiliary soldiers, the advantage is low maintenance cost. Town militia asterisk 160, melee attack. 22, spear unit, +4 against cavalry, charge. 28 melee defense. 27, bronze shield, no armor, recruitment fee. 125 gold coins maintenance fee. 40 gold coins, Welsh longbowman asterisk 90, melee attack. 20, mace, ranged attack. 15, longbow +5 armor sundering, defense. 30, light chainmail, recruitment fee. 400 gold coins maintenance fee. 90 gold coins. Different from the complex Warhammer unit panel, the human panel is much simpler. Of course, Rohan was not surprised by this. After all, in his opinion, these human servants were just ordinary cannon fodder units. Compared with the elite elven warriors, the combat effectiveness of humans is obviously much weaker. After testing, a dark swordsman can deal with 5 town militias without taking a breath. After randomly recruiting several teams to defend the elf settlement, Rohan left Salem Harbor with the Silver Mist Warriors. The King of Humans is waiting for his arrival in Lion Lake City. A few weeks later. Warning. The characteristic, Curse of the Horned Rat, is activated. Luck index minus 50%. You are such a jerk, system. You don't have to repeat this sentence every time. Rohan rode on a white horse, looking at the 3 illusory cards in his hand, with a flash of anger in his eyes. 5 weeks. 5 weeks. Do you know how I spent these 5 weeks? Exclamation mark. On the first day of every week, Rohan would get up happily, looking forward to a new round of card drawing. He didn't ask for any peerless artifacts, but some useful magic props would be fine. However, Curse of the Horned Rat was like a shadow hanging over Rohan's heart, reminding him of the great shortcomings and virtues of the Horned Rat all the time. Look at what was drawn before. Prank props from the Harry Potter world, Fess's eggs, dinosaur egg fossils from the Jurassic world, Coke mixed with industrial syrup, and it was made in a small workshop. There were all kinds of messy things. Even if Rohan tried hard to find something useful from these garbage, he would find in despair that nothing was useful in the end. Looking at the injured card that had not been opened, Rohan hesitated for a moment and chose to put it away first. Maybe the way he opened it was wrong? Just as Rohan was thinking about it, Dario rushed to Rohan and reported, "My lord, we have arrived at Lion Lake City." Rohan looked up and saw a large city surrounded by huge stone walls located on the plain. The wide moat and numerous arrow towers made Rohan have no doubt about the city's defense capabilities. The wide farmland and rivers are located next to the city, and the 3 walls including the inner city are enough to prove that this is a self-sufficient war fortress. Rohan took out a pair of gold wire telescopes from his arms. This was a small thing he saw when he was strolling in the human market. He liked it very much. Through the telescope, Rohan looked at the large scorpion crossbows and the dense longbow guards on the city wall, raised his eyebrows and said, "Easy to defend, and difficult to attack, isn't it? My lord, this is nothing. There are dozens of magic turrets on the walls of Cologne in Britannia, which are much more difficult to attack. Yes, my dear adjutant, but with our current strength, I'm afraid we can neither take down Cologne nor this city." After putting away the telescope, Rohan looked at the more than 400 Silver Mist warriors behind him and smiled. "But our ambition will not stop because of these small setbacks." Hearing this, Dario and the surrounding Silver Mist warriors smiled. That's right, they are dark elves. Exciting and thrilling battles and wonderful adventures will only make them stronger. Keep going. Soldiers, let these short-lived species have a good look at your handsome faces. Blood, glory, victory. With neat steps, Rohan's army began to leave the main road and walk towards the road leading to Lion Lake City. The pedestrians on the avenue were frightened by the elf army and avoided them one after another, hiding on the roadside to watch these creatures that only exist in legends. After 2 months, the rumor of the elves landing spread throughout the not-so-big kingdom of Crowest, but this was the first time they witnessed these noble and magical creatures so closely. Ding-ling-ling, the guards on the city wall soon discovered Rohan's army, and waves of alarm bells rang in Lion Lake City. The elf army has arrived. Be alert. His Majesty the King said that we must show our best side and hold our chests up. Hurry up, lift your butts, and get on the city wall. P.S. Damn, I have only read the relevant commentary and fan fiction of Game of Thrones before, and now I'm trying to catch up on the plot of the whole season. I guess it will be very ugly when I write it later. Does anyone want to read it? Chapter 30 to the Rude Prince. In the palace hall, the old king was putting on his most gorgeous golden armor with the help of his attendants. Looking at his slightly exaggerated self in the mirror, the old king couldn't help but say, "Wouldn't this look too frivolous? Maybe I should wear the plate armor used in battle?" Beside the throne, a young woman was helping the king to adjust his red cloak. Hearing the king's mumbling, she smiled and said, "Father, this is just a welcoming ceremony, not a battle. There is no need to be so exaggerated. My daughter, you have to know that this is the first time that humans have come into contact with other races. There may be forces outside the Albion continent. We must be careful." Isabel shook her head helplessly. Her father was good in everything, except being too cautious. The elves in the legend are all simple and kind. How could they be dangerous? She had read the letter sent by Count Carmen. These elves were very polite and did not take the initiative to provoke disputes. The old king looked at his daughter who didn't care and sighed. You are too naive. How do we know if these elves are pretending to be kind? According to you, the Prince Hallie you asked me to marry was also pretending to be respectful and humble? What are you talking about? Prince Hallie is young and handsome, and he was once the prince of the kingdom of Gus. How could he be a hypocritical person? The old king was a little angry, but Isabel ignored the old king and ran away from the palace hall. Seeing this, the royal knights hurriedly chased after her, and the old king could only shake his head helplessly. Your Majesty, all your armor is ready. Looking at his majestic self in the mirror, the old king nodded, sat on the throne and said, let the elven army enter the city and summon Prince Hallie by the way. Inside Lion Lake City, dear Elf Lord. Welcome to Lion Lake City. I'm the Royal Knight Commander, Elmont. Rohan looked at the Knight Commander in front of him, slightly saluted as a human, and said, hello, human knight. I'm Rohan, an envoy sent by the great elf witch king. Regardless of whether it was true or false, the title of envoy did scare the other party. Elmont immediately respectfully saluted Rohan, then stood up and said, the kingdom of Cloist welcomes you. Please forgive us humans for never having contact with elves before, so there may be some impoliteness. Please forgive me. No, I have visited human countries more than once, and I have even seen human civilizations that don't even have city walls. I still remember how they rushed towards us with wooden sticks and bare buttocks. It was a terrible memory. At NORSE monkey, hahaha, that's really bad, but please rest assured, you will never see naked people in our kingdom, except for some perverts, of course. Light-hearted jokes can bring people closer, and Elmont's attitude has become more casual. After smiling and asking the guards to hold Rohan's horse, Elmont took Rohan's soldiers to find a place to rest. Many citizens watched the elf army on the street, and when they saw the handsome elf boys passing by in neat steps, many people exclaimed. The officers were also watching the neat silver mist warriors, and after comparing them with the human soldiers standing in a crooked line behind them, they couldn't help shaking their heads. The soldiers who were disliked by the superiors could only curl their lips in grievance. You dislike us? We still hope to change the elf superiors. Rohan in phoenix armor and Erio in lion robes are both handsome among the elves. With such superiors, it seems better than those noble officers who only know how to eat, drink and have fun, right? Elmont, who was leading the team, was also comparing the silver mist warriors with the royal knights, and finally he could only sigh with regret. Rohan naturally noticed Elmont's loss, so he stepped forward and comforted him like Versailles. Don't sigh, the longevity of the elves gives us hundreds of years to hone our martial arts. You don't have to be frustrated about your weakness. Point sir, you are really good at comforting people. Hearing this, Elmont's face was bitter. When he thought that the other person was handsome, long-lived, and stronger than himself, Elmont felt a sense of emotion. Passing through the noisy market, Rohan finally came to the human palace. Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar human buildings, Rohan couldn't help but recall, in the past 100 years, except for the time when he followed the Witch King to visit his mother, Morathi, he had never left Nagaroth. Seeing that Rohan was constantly looking at the palace, Elmont asked with some pride, I heard that the envoy has seen other human kingdoms. May I ask how our palace is? It's pretty good. Since Rohan had not seen other human palaces, he gave a pertinent answer after comparing the Black Castle of Nagarand and the Bloody Altar of Hargansi. In Rohan's opinion, the decoration of this castle is neither as elegant as that of the High Elves, nor as military valuable as that of the Dark Elves. But Elmont didn't think so. Seeing that Rohan didn't have much shock on his face, he asked curiously, from the envoy's appearance, it seems that you don't think our castle is very good. Can you tell me about the castles of other races? Your castle is indeed good, of course. This is only relative to humans. I have come into contact with a humanoid creature that looks like a lizard. Their castle can float in the air. Puchy. Before Rohan finished speaking, a burst of sneer came from not far away, which was particularly harsh in the empty hall. Hearing this voice, the smile on Elmont's face froze. He turned his head to see which bastard was so rude, then frowned and saluted. Prince Hallie, your behavior just now was impolite. Is this the elf? Why do I feel like a group of circuses wearing pointed ears and gorgeous clothes, using clumsy tricks to deceive the king? But I heard that they built a church that advocates heresy and collected a lot of money. Hearing such an insult, Dario behind Rohan angrily drew out the elf scimitar, and the silver mist guard also raised the halberd and looked at the young man who laughed at him. My lord, I told you that these humans don't know etiquette. Let me chop off this dirty short-lived creature who doesn't know etiquette with a knife. Although Dario said this in Elvish, anyone could see the murderous aura on his beautiful face. Looking at the royal knights who were surrounding the elves, Rohan put his hand on the sword, and a faint blue light was lighting up in his hand, which made the prince and the knights who started to insult change their faces. Rohan did not draw his sword, but looked at Elmont with a calm face and said, I've learned something new. Is this how you humans entertain your guests? If you want to rely on just a few dozen soldiers, then I don't mind having a sparring match with human knights. P.S. Brothers, how about adding some element that are not from fantasy movies, such as a group of alien war beasts? Chapter 33, Establishing Authority. Looking at the swaying human guards around him, Rohan narrowed his eyes slightly, attached magic power to his sword, and a faint blue light began to emerge. The dark elves behind him were also eager to try, wishing to split these dying humans in half right now. Since they hadn't seen blood for dozens of days, Rohan's soldiers had long been lonely and itchy. Although they didn't say it out of respect for Rohan, some rumors still reached Rohan's ears in private. Although it was just a complaint from some warriors, Rohan's recent performance was indeed weak compared to other fear lords. Treating humans kindly? It would be better to burn down the human city, empty their warehouses, kill all the resistance, and tie up the others as slaves. Using conspiracy and trickery to seize the human country, that's the trick of the week. The brave Durachi warriors are not afraid of any battle, so they should wipe out the fragile army of the short-lived species on the front battlefield. Although they now believe in the Lady of the Mist, this does not prevent them from still longing for fierce battles and glorious victories from the bottom of their hearts. Perhaps we have always been too kind, making you humans think that we elves are just like the elves in your legends, who are good at art, and are the little followers of the protagonists in fairy tales. Rohan gently stroked the pattern on the sword, then pointed it at Prince Hall, and provoked him in human language. Come on, arrogant human, draw your sword, let me see if your martial arts can match your mouth. Maybe your sword is as fragile as your delicate body under your gorgeous coat, and it will fall apart if a woman touches it lightly. The nobles watching outside the palace obviously did not expect that the elves would say such vulgar words. Obviously, they really thought that the elves of Rohan were like the elves in the legends. The humiliated Prince Hali blushed, drew out his jeweled sword, and pointed it at Rohan, cursing in a low voice, "Pointy ears, you will pay for your outrageous words. Guards, kill them." He did not suddenly want to provoke the elves. After all, as the prince of the kingdom of Gus, he came to this palace for only one purpose, that is, to marry Princess Isabel of the strongest kingdom on this continent. After he finally gained the trust of the old king, he found that the princess completely ignored him, and often wore plain clothes to leave the palace to venture out. This made the prince, who had already regarded this beautiful and silly princess as his own, very angry. What if one day he was robbed of the red by a drunken and unruly citizen? Wouldn't he lose a lot? Especially now that there are many elves on the street, who are much more handsome than him. Who knows if this innocent princess who likes fairy tales will take the initiative to throw herself into the arms of these elves after seeing them? Prince Hali, who always feels that there is a green light on his head, now just wants to destroy the relationship between the kingdom and the elves, and it would be best if they can fight to the death. Rohan didn't know that all this was caused by his handsomeness, but even if he knew, he wouldn't care. There were only a few dozen human guards. Even if there were hundreds, he wouldn't care, because he had a lot of rune magic and life-saving potions as a trump card. Looking at the human servants who were getting closer and closer and Prince Hali who was hiding in the crowd and quietly leaving, Rohan's eyebrows slightly raised. That's it? As if seeing that Rohan was distracted, a human guard holding a spear stabbed Rohan's thigh. The action of this guard was like opening Pandora's box. All the servants of the kingdom of Gus waved their weapons and slashed at Rohan and his elves. "You're looking for death." A red light flashed in Rohan's eyes. He grabbed the spear that was stabbing at him, dragged the human soldier in front of him, and stabbed him through with his sword. Then he blocked the struggling soldier in front of him as a human shield, while slashing the human guards around him, and kept an eye on the situation of the Silver Mist guards behind him. It must be said that as the first actual combat of the Silver Mist guards, the performance of these warriors was quite good. Dario, of course, needs no further explanation. As an old warrior who has lived for hundreds of years, he and the elven double swords in his hands were like dancers, easily cutting bloody marks on the necks of human soldiers. The Silver Mist guards waved their halberds and faithfully protected Rohan's back. Even at the relatively narrow entrance to the palace, they could use the enchanted halberd blades to ruthlessly dismember humans. Elmont watched more and more soldiers who did not know the truth join the battle, and hurriedly stopped them. "Stop. What are you doing?" However, the two sides who were red-eyed obviously had no intention of stopping. The guards of the Kingdom of Gus ignored Elmont at all, and the Kingdom guards saw the elves who were constantly hacking and killing human soldiers, and subconsciously began to help their compatriots. The smell of blood in the air fascinated the Durachi warriors, even if Rohan did not want to end this killing feast so soon. More and more human soldiers were chopped to the ground, and even some knights and nobles who did not know the truth began to join the battle. Just when the situation was getting out of control, an old but not majestic roar came from the palace. "Stop. Stop it." The old king looked at the bloody steps in anger, and all kinds of broken limbs were scattered in the solemn palace hall. After being notified by the maids, the old king came to the hall immediately after a short thought, wanting to stop this absurd battle. Unfortunately, in the few minutes he was thinking, the elves had already gone crazy. The palace was full of shouts and killing. The humans in the battle did not hear the king's shouts, but the elves with keen hearing heard it. But they all tacitly chose to pretend not to hear it. "Who do you think you are? You stop when you say stop." Therefore, the elves' hands moved faster, as if they were in a state of panic. Rohan even attached magic power to the blade and threw it out, and a series of blue sword energy instantly cut dozens of human warriors around in half. At one time, hundreds of pieces of corpses fell to the ground, and the bloody scene frightened the human soldiers so much that they dared not move forward. The old king looked grim. He didn't know that the elves hadn't heard what he said just now, but this didn't affect his first impression of the elves. They were very bad. Rohan and others didn't care about the life and death of humans at all. Every time they attacked, they went straight to the vital points. Almost none of the human guards who fell to the ground survived. Even the soldiers who escaped from the war zone by chance were missing arms and legs. "Enough. Everyone put away your weapons." This time the human soldiers finally heard the old king's words and hurriedly stood away and put away their weapons. Then the old king looked at the elves who were not injured, looked at their scimitars and halberds stained with human blood, suppressed his anger and said, "Dear elf messenger, can you please put away your weapons? P.S. The main line seems to be a bit dragged out. Try to finish this world in a dozen chapters." Chapter 34, Abducting the Little White Rabbit. Rohan shook off the blood on the sword and made sure that none of the elves were injured. Then he looked at the king and smiled. "Is this the etiquette of the Albion continent? It seems to be no different from that of the barbarians. I think I should inform the Great Witch King and ask him to re-examine his relationship with humans. I think I will figure out what happened, but now, I would like to ask you to put away your weapon." The old king did not know about Prince Hall, but he also noticed clues from the conversation with Rohan. Seeing this, Elmont, who was ordering the soldiers to leave, hurried forward to explain, "Your Majesty, it was Prince Hally who provoked the elf messenger, and he also ordered the people of Gus to attack the messenger." "Prince Hally? Where is he? He left after attacking me. A human prince? What a coward." Rohan didn't care about the old king's increasingly livid face. After putting his sword back into the scabbard, he took out a document and threw it to Elmont and said, "Listen, we came to this unknown continent to explore and preach. If something like this happens again, I can only attribute it to a provocation to all elves. Don't worry, we will give the elves a satisfactory answer to this matter." After Elmont's explanation and confirming that most of the dead on the ground were from the Kingdom of Gus, the king's face improved. Without others to disrupt the situation, the next things became much simpler. As the chief guard of the Witch King, Rohan naturally learned some diplomatic etiquette, although the Witch King never gave him the opportunity to time. The Old King agreed to Rohan's request to form an elf expedition team, and the Old King hoped to sign a trade agreement with the elves, and Rohan also agreed. These were trivial matters, but the two disagreed on the issue of preaching. Rohan naturally hoped to spread his faith freely, so that a holy war for the Lady of Mist could be developed in the future. But although the Old King did not know Rohan's plan, he also knew the harm of spreading paganism. I respect the faith of the elf god, but I still hope that you will only preach in the Serenport area. The Old King rubbed his temples tiredly. From morning to evening, he had been fighting with Rohan verbally. This made the Old King in human form feel exhausted. Oh my god, it's hard for me to deal with it. What if one day I'm gone? The simple Isabel might sell herself and help the elves count money. Looking at Rohan, who smiled like an old fox, the Old King was full of worries about the future. As the sun was setting, the maids nearby began to light candles. Rohan stood up politely and said, "It seems that it is getting late. I think your majesty must be tired." Ha ha ha, old people are always easily tired. I really envy you elves. In that case, let's talk about it another day. I apologize again for our unpleasant first meeting. Looking at Rohan, who was bowing slightly, the Old King's eyes twitched slightly. After spending an afternoon together, he naturally heard that this elf who would not get up early without profit was asking him for an apology. But humans were indeed in the wrong in this matter, so the Old King agreed. No, in order to make up for the loss of the elves, please accept the gift from humans. Seeing the Knight Commander Elmond coming up with a small box, Rohan took the box and said with a smile, "How can I feel embarrassed? After all, we elves are also wrong. But it is the kindness of His Majesty the King after all. Then I will accept it on behalf of the Witch King. Goodbye." Looking at the backs of Rohan and other elves leaving, the Old King sighed deeply and asked Elmond, "Where is the princess? I haven't seen her for a day." She went to the elves' residence and said she wanted to see what the elves in fairy tales look like. Fairy tales? These elves are not as kind as in fairy tales. I can feel the greed in his eyes when he looked at my golden armor. As for his innocent daughter, the Old King could only pray for her and hope that she could live her life in peace. Bring her back. Don't let her get close to those elves anymore. It's dangerous. Yes, sir. After receiving the order, Elmond led the royal guards to go out to find the little princess who liked to go incognito. Unfortunately, if nothing unexpected happens, accidents will always come suddenly. The elf camp. Wow, are you the elf messenger? You are so handsome. Rohan, who was about to check the box, looking at the girl in front of him who blocked him at the entrance of the camp, Rohan couldn't help but move his eyes downwards curiously, and then hurriedly and politely stared at the other's starry eyes. This skirt is too big. No, this cloak is too round. Looking at this childlike girl, Rohan couldn't help but praise her. "Thank you for your compliment, beautiful lady. Your charm is one of the best even among the elves." Indeed, although there are beautiful elves everywhere in Nagaland, Rohan has not seen such pure and innocent eyes for decades. Hearing Rohan's praise, the lady couldn't help but smile cutely and said softly to Rohan with aristocratic etiquette, "Respected sir, please allow me to introduce myself. I'm the princess of the kingdom of Cloist, Isabel." Hearing this, Rohan looked at Isabel seriously and was a little confused. "Are you serious? Shouldn't the old fox give birth to a clever little fox? How could this be such a pure little white rabbit?" Anyway, after learning the other party's identity as a princess, Rohan threw the box to Dario and saluted elegantly. "Respected princess, please forgive my impoliteness just now. I'm the elf messenger, Rohan. If you don't mind, I will prepare some elf refreshments for you to make up for my impoliteness." "Okay, I just have a lot of questions to ask you." Looking at the innocent princess in front of him, Rohan narrowed his eyes slightly and began to think. If he remembered correctly, this princess seemed to be the only heir of the old fox. In other words, if we can trick this princess to our side, we may not even have to fight the holy war in the future. "Please follow me, beautiful princess. Let's have a good chat. I will tell you everything you want to know." At this time, Rohan was like the big bad wolf who lured Little Red Riding Hood with candy and took the princess, who was constantly looking around curiously, into the elf camp. The princess didn't know that not far from the camp, a pair of vicious eyes were staring at her who was jumping into Rohan's tent. P.S. Thank you for the invitation. There is no group for the time being. Don't think about the extra chapters all day long. Read more Xing Many Yang. Okay. Ahem. Do you really want to read the extra chapters? Open bracket close bracket. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Life is a Play. As I expected, these elves are my enemies. Seeing Isabel enter Rohan's tent, Prince Hala's eyes were red, and he felt as if a fire was burning in his heart. Due to the heavy losses of his followers, he had to monitor the elves personally. After taking a last look at Rohan's tent, Prince Hali, who was dressed in black, turned around and prepared to leave. He had to plan how to deal with these elves. We must find a way to remove these obstacles. That diplomat must be eliminated first. Really? Then please allow me to eliminate you first. Puff. Rohan's voice came from behind Prince Hali. Prince Hali was so scared that he wanted to draw his sword, but the severe pain in his chest made him gradually lose his strength. Looking at the elf sword that pierced his chest, he tried to turn his head to look at Rohan's smiling face, and said in disbelief, "How is it possible? You are not sorry." When the evil wolf has the leisure to tease the little white rabbit, he must first ensure the safety of the surroundings. Looking at Prince Hala's gradually distorted face, Rohan leaned close to his ear and whispered like a devil, "The princess will stay at my place tonight, but in order to prevent the royal knights from coming, there must be a more urgent situation than looking for the princess, such as the king being assassinated." Nailing the sword that pierced Prince Hali to the wall, Rohan pulled out the dagger, aimed at Prince Hala's head and stabbed it. TSK, my skills are rusty, and there is a piece stuck to the flesh. I guess Brother Cull will dislike me again when he sees it. The palace, the king's bedroom. The old king sat in front of the window in thin pajamas, holding the queen's bracelet in his hand, his face full of fatigue and loneliness. Looking at the portrait of the queen and Isabel as children by the window, the king closed his eyes and murmured, "My dear, I will join you after I take good care of Isabel. Maybe we don't have to wait until that moment." A figure in a black robe suddenly jumped up from under the windowsill and stabbed a sharp dagger into the old king's chest. The old king glared and grabbed the assassin's right hand holding the dagger. At the same time, he saw the face under the veil. It was Prince Hali. "Don't worry, your majesty, I will take good care of Isabel, of course, after I get the throne." "Holly, you evil beast of Gus." A smile appeared on Prince Hala's ferocious face, and then he took advantage of the old king's shock and anger, and stabbed him dozens of times in a row. It was not until the seriously injured old king slowly lost his strength and fell down that Prince Hali let go of his right hand and jumped directly from the windowsill. After a while, the chief of the guards heard the noise and broke open the king's door. Seeing the old king lying in a pool of blood, he shouted in horror, "The king has been assassinated. Recall all the knights immediately, close the castle, and no one is allowed to enter or leave." 10 minutes later. Dong dong dong, accompanied by the alarm bells from the castle, Rohan, dressed in plain clothes, walked into his tent with a plate of exquisite elf cakes. Isabel was lying on Rohan's bed, staring with her big lively eyes like a little deer, curiously flipping through a book called Holy Mist. This was a book that Rohan specially made in the Albion continent language to spread the faith of the Lady of Mist. Rohan put the cake on the bed and said to Isabel, who looked soft and cute, gently, "This is the elf cake I made by myself. Do you want to try it?" "Okay." After picking up a piece of cake and feeding it to Isabel, Rohan sat at the head of the bed, took the book from her hand and asked, "Is there anything you don't understand?" "Yes. There are many questions." "It's okay, little cutie. We have plenty of time to tell you about this knowledge." There was no conversation that night. The next morning, Rohan slowly opened his eyes and looked at Isabel curled up in his arms. He couldn't help but touch her soft face. All night yesterday, he had been explaining the legendary charm of the Warhammer world to this cute princess, who was looking forward to adventures everywhere. And Isabel was also immersed in the epic story. in the second half of the night, except for what she shouldn't do. This gentle little rabbit had obediently done everything. Looking at Isabel, who was still sleeping, Rohan couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Although he had been in the dark elf society full of conspiracy and intrigue for 100 years, the human part of him still felt ashamed of his behavior. It's a pity that, if it wasn't for reducing unnecessary sacrifices, he would have hoped that their encounter could be more normal. Isabel, whose face was touched, opened her sleepy eyes, looked at Rohan, and asked with a smile, "Are you going to see my father today? I will plead for you. No, dear princess, for you. I don't mind changing my plan." Last night, Rohan had overturned all his original plans. There was no need to wait for any plot, nor any old king. Rohan could now launch a revenge war blessed by the Mist Lady through the princess. As for the peasant boy Jack in the original book, without the adventure of magic beans, he should just be a peasant. Isabel hugged Rohan sweetly. She thought that Rohan was going to change the adventure plan for her. Rohan touched his plump peach, suppressed his guilt and said, "Get up, we should go see the old king. Maybe he won't mind you staying out last night." A few hours later, in the palace, in the old king's bedroom, Rohan stood outside the door, looking at the head of the royal knights in front of him with a serious face and said, "Please forgive me for knowing nothing about this. Last night, the princess came to the elf camp, and I was busy entertaining her." "Really? Are you sure that no elf left your camp that night?" "I can assure you. And didn't you arrange guards to patrol near the elf camp? Didn't you find it?" Elmond looked at the righteous elf messenger and couldn't help sighing in his heart. Last night, he was about to lead the team to the elf camp to find the princess, but who knew that the king was suddenly assassinated, so he had to return to the palace. As a result, early in the morning, he was confused to see the princess sweetly holding Rohan's hand. No matter how he looked at it, it was a success. Rohan heard Isabel's crying in the room, took out a bottle of potion and said, "Can I check the king's injuries? I don't know if the elves' medical skills will work on humans, but do you mind if I try? I need to ask for your permission. Please wait." Seeing the sincerity in Rohan's eyes, Elmond hesitated for a moment, and finally made up his mind to enter the room. Not long after, Elmond came out, and nodded to Rohan. "P.S. Since you are all saying this, I will speed up a little bit cac. Chapter 36 all depends on acting." After entering the room, Rohan saw Isabella crying on the bedside, while the old king was lying on the bed with a pale face. In the room, there were several well-trained doctors discussing something in the corner. From their shaking heads from time to time, and the sad expressions on their faces, it was not difficult to see that the old king was in a critical situation. Seeing Rohan coming in, Isabella rushed into his arms and begged in a low voice, "Please, Lord, save my father." Western nicknames are usually the first letter plus an or the pronunciation of Lee. "I just made one up here." Rohan rubbed Isabella's soft red long hair, nodded silently, and then looked at the old king. On the soft couch, the old king's cool had gradually faded, and the cold sweat on his forehead reflected Rohan and the cute little white rabbit in Rohan's arms. The doctors around looked at the legendary noble elf. One of the old royal doctors sighed and said, "We have tried our best. Your Majesty can only hold on until tomorrow. I hope the elf's medical skills can be as good as in fairy tales." "Does Rohan have a way to save the old king?" "Of course, if it is just an ordinary knife wound, he can stop the wound with healing potion, and then drink recovery potion desperately." But Rohan didn't want to cure the old king. In his plan that changed temporarily, the old king must die, and he must also use his remaining energy. Rohan pretended to check the old king's wound. The black blood on it was chilling. Just in case, Prince Harley smeared snake venom on the dagger. He was able to survive until now thanks to the well-trained doctors. Rohan shook his head and said to Isabel, who looked expectant, "Lisa, there is a kind of snake venom on this wound. The venom has penetrated into the king's body. Even the elves' medical skills can't save him." "Woo woo woo, how can this happen?" "I can only use an elf spell to force the remaining vitality in the king's body. Then the king will be able to wake up for a moment. You are ready to see him for the last time." Looking at Isabel crying in front of the old king, Rohan poured a bottle of purple potion into the king's mouth. After a while, the old king's face appeared sickly red, and his eyelids opened slightly, revealing turbid eyeballs. Seeing this, Rohan called all the doctors to leave the palace. Looking at Elmont and many royal knights who were anxiously waiting outside the palace, Rohan sighed and said, "A kind of snake venom I have never seen before. It's too late. Now the king and the princess will meet for the last time." Then he ignored the humans with different expressions and sat down alone on a chair near the corner of the bedroom, closing his eyes as if thinking. No one dared to disturb the elf messenger. The knights thought Rohan was thinking about the next diplomatic strategy. No one noticed that Rohan quietly drank bottle after bottle of the same purple potion, and a strange purple light flashed in his blue eyes. Shit, did I write about the protagonist's eye color before? I forgot. Inside the bedroom, in front of the old king's window, Isabel gently stroked the old king's cheek with her hand, feeling the slight pain of her fingertips being pricked by the pale beard, and couldn't help crying. "Father." "Isabel, my daughter." The old king's turbid eyes gradually regained clarity, and he looked at Isabel by the bed tenderly. Looking at the old king's doting eyes, Isabel asked painfully, "Who did it? Why did God do this to you and me?" "It was Prince Gus. I was too careless. I didn't expect that he would do anything to get the throne." A trace of purple light flashed in the old king's eyes, but Isabel didn't see it clearly because she was too sad. Hearing that the murderer was Prince Hallie, who always showed her courtesy, Isabel opened her eyes wide and bit her teeth and blamed herself. "It's all my fault. Maybe I should have agreed to his proposal so that he wouldn't assassinate you. No, daughter, I tried to persuade you to marry him. This is the biggest mistake I have made in my life." The purple light in the old king's eyes faded greatly, and he shouted this sentence with some excitement. Then the old king used up his last strength, held Isabel's hand, and said with tears and regret, "Losing your mother is the darkest day of my life. I just don't want to lose you again. I shouldn't have forced you to find a queen in the first place. You should find your own love, just like your mother said, to become the queen of Cloist." Outside the palace, Rohan frowned. He really didn't expect that the puppet potion would show signs of failure. However, he also heard the old king's confession before his death. For this father who loved his daughter deeply, he could only express his apology. Although he couldn't bear it, Rohan still increased the magic power that was constantly operating in his body to control the king and the room. The old king's tearful eyes were covered with purple light again. His turbid eyes stared blankly at Isabel, whose face was red with tears, and said in a regretful tone, "The kingdom of Gus is now in full swing. My daughter, don't think about revenge for me, live well." Then he slowly closed his eyes and slowly lowered Isabel's hand. Isabel stared at the old king with a face full of regret, and held the old king's hand to her face with trembling hands. "Father, king." 1 week later, in the queen's bedroom, "Please forgive me for not being able to find the medieval coronation process, so I will skip it directly." On the soft velvet bed, 2 young men and women who had just finished the 4,000-word extra chapter were wrapped in quilts to rest. "Law, I want to ask you to do me a favor. Please make your request, my queen, for you. I'm willing to take the risk of picking the stars in the sky for you," Rohan said gently. As someone who could coax Lady Misty to leave shyly, it was easy for him to deal with this simple new queen. Isabel lay in Rohan's arms, looking at Rohan with tenderness in her eyes. But Rohan knew that the queen's heart had successfully become what he wanted. "I want you to help me train the troops and take revenge on the kingdom of Gus, and then you will be my king." When the kingdom of Gus was mentioned, Isabel's eyes showed unimaginable viciousness. Hearing this, Rohan covered the 2 of them with a blanket and smiled gently. "I'm not interested in being a king, but I'm very interested in the queen herself. Your Majesty, how about the military expenses? If my father had unified the entire Albion continent, he would not have been assassinated by those remnants." Hearing that Rohan was willing to help her, Isabel threw herself on him lovingly and said, "Do what you want to do. I just want to unify the entire Albion, and then I will go on adventures with you." "That's what you said, so I have to do what I want." Not approved. Chapter 37, Revenge War. Gus, a kingdom rich in grain and iron ore. Although it was once conquered by the kingdom of Cloist, it has restored its military strength under the governance of the current king. With 100,000 standing troops and thousands of kingdom knights, this kingdom has become one of the few military powers on the Albion continent. With a strong military force and the protection of the newly rebuilt castle, the wealth of the kingdom of Gus is also increasing. The villages in the fields are full of vitality, children are playing on the road, and countless farmers are diligently harvesting in the golden sea of wheat. The piles of wheat and the dried meat hanging on the wall everywhere show that the kingdom of Gus is experiencing a rare harvest joy. In the town, dozens of donkey carts and ox carts are being loaded, and some merchants are talking excitedly, talking about the known commodity prices. The villagers gathered in a family, where a festive wedding was being held. Just as the villagers were drinking the mellow beer, and looking forward to seeing the delicate bride, they had no idea that the disaster had come. Ding-ling-ling ding-ling on the stone wall of the village, a series of rapid alarm bells rang out, and dozens of human militiamen hurriedly climbed the wall to guard and close the stone wall gate. Unfortunately, although they reacted very quickly, it was too late. Before they could stand firmly on the stone wall, hundreds of sharp arrows fell from the sky and shot the defenseless militiamen to death. Oh my god, what happened? Is it the bandits? But how can they be so fierce? The few militiamen who escaped by chance hurriedly hid behind the bunker. They only saw some figures in green clothes under the wall. In fact, the speculation of these militiamen was close to the truth. The people under the stone wall were indeed bandits. Sherwood Ranger * 75. Melee attack. 28. Shield and sword, ranged attack. 18. Longbow +5 armor penetration, defense. 25. Copper shield, leather armor, recruitment fee. 500 gold coins maintenance fee. 120 gold coins. Isabel's desire for revenge was so strong that she completely opened up the right to recruit soldiers and preached to Rohan, so Rohan's colony began to develop rapidly. Although some nobles questioned this, they were nothing compared to Rohan's pillow talk. What's more, Rohan really liked this simple and lovely queen, so he never committed any transgressions, except in the bedroom. This also greatly improved the attitude of the royal knights and some nobles loyal to the royal family towards Rohan. Without any resistance, Rohan directly launched an attack on the kingdom of Gus, after recruiting nearly 10,000 human servants. Several hooks were thrown onto the wall, and under the horrified attention of the militia, a dozen Black Ark pirates instantly climbed onto the stone wall. The poor militia tried to resist with spears and daggers, but how could they resist the elves' army? After killing all the militiamen near the stone wall, these flexible pirates opened the stone wall gate. Outside the gate, the Sherwood Rangers and the Druchii army, who had been waiting for a long time, filed in and pounced on the defenseless village. The village, which was still celebrating, immediately fell into chaos, and a looting began. Led by the experienced and efficient Druchii, with the help of the vassal army, hundreds of carriages of wealth were looted. Countless villagers were handcuffed with ropes, and they cried and begged for mercy, hoping that the noble elves in the legend would let them go. The delicate bride was directly taken away and handed over to the leader, and her fate would be unknown. However, the fate of others was nothing more than becoming the ballast stone at the bottom of the Black Ark and being taken back to Salamport for loading. In the end, they became insignificant victims of the advanced and wealthy slavery of Druchii. The entire kingdom of Gus was crying, and scenes like this swept across the entire Gus. At Rohan's request, the elven army of thousands of people was split into dozens of teams, and each elven captain led hundreds of vassal troops to enter the interior of Gus to plunder. Ordinary militias could not resist at all, and the elves could easily tear their lines apart. Although the guards of the caravan resisted with all their might, they had to give up resistance when faced with a large number of vassal troops. As for those noble lords, after receiving the war report, most of them chose to transport the army and food into the castle, and then prayed to God that this disaster would end soon. Gus's huge army could not catch up with the elves and human rangers who were moving strangely in the mountains and forests, and the knights who ventured to pursue them would become dead souls under the rain of arrows. Lion Lake City, inside the palace, Rohan looked at the somewhat shy Isabel on the throne with some surprise, and couldn't help but speak to confirm. "Your Majesty, are you sure you want to build a new seminary and become an apprentice of Lady of the Mist?" "What? Your Majesty, you can't do that. I think this kind of thing needs to be discussed with more nobles, and it can't be decided so easily." The noble knights around heard Rohan say this, and they were frightened, and hurriedly advised Isabel Due to the problem of spreading the faith of Lady of the Mist, the relationship between the royal family and the monastery has reached a freezing point. If at this time, the royal family makes such a move that leans towards pagans, then religious chaos is likely to break out in the kingdom. Hearing the noble's objections, Isabel's face fell. As a rebellious princess since childhood, she was not a devout believer in God, otherwise she would not be so eager to take risks. In the book that Rohan gave her, she accidentally saw a goddess blessing called longevity. Although Isabel loved Rohan deeply, Rohan did love her. But the lifespan issue that the two had always avoided talking about still made her feel that there was a bottomless gulf between her and Rohan. Every night, Rohan would hug Isabel and teach her some interesting knowledge about the Warhammer world. This made her deeply fascinated by the fantasy world where Rohan was. She longed to go on an adventure with her lover, and even the 4 evil chaos gods in his mouth could not stop her desire. But she was very self-aware and knew that she was weak and her lifespan was too short, so she did not say this desire. The gentle girl had already made up her mind that, even if she could only be a meteor in Rohan's long life, she wanted to be the brightest one. But, longevity gave her new hope. The talented Isabel had already guessed that Rohan came to this world to pursue wealth and adventure. And she could learn spells from the Lady of the Mist, no longer a vase, but a helper on Rohan's adventure. Rohan frowned. He was busy commanding the army recently, and didn't know what Isabel was thinking. No need to say more. I have already decided on this matter. Let's continue discussing it after the War of Vengeance is over. P.S. I just bought The Witcher 3 and Warhammer 3, so I can try some related element. Any recommendations? Cack, by the way, the author is not a professional Warhammer fan, so please forgive me for some incorrect settings in the following. Chapter 38 Gus in the Ruins. Lion Lake City, Queen's bedroom. After a series of earth-shaking 6,000-word side stories, Rohan touched Isabel's flushed face, and after listening to her story, he couldn't help laughing and said, "Little fool, you can tell me this kind of thing directly. The Witch King has a longevity potion with no side effects. After I buy a copy for a search, I will solve your lifespan problem." In the setting, Spicy Chicken Shreds achieved his own longevity through superb alchemy without the help of divine power, and the old witch cried with envy. Isabel buried her head in Rohan's arms and said shyly, "I just want to go on an adventure with you. When I learn how to use magic, I can help you." "Okay, then wait until I resolve the war on this continent, and then I will take you to my world." "Really? That's great." Looking at Isabel's excited face, Rohan smiled and scratched her nose and said, "I have already asked Lady Mist about the seminary. If you really have the talent to learn magic, the latest clone will personally teach you just like that." The seminary's matter was confirmed in a world-shaking situation. A month later, in the capital of Gus, the city of Chillon. Attack the city wall. Tens of thousands of human servants are launching anti-attachment tactics against the city wall that is more than 10 meters high. Countless ladders and dozens of siege towers are attacking under the cover of archers. Rohan, who has put on the armor of the Lord of Fear again, stands on the city wall like a demon, constantly waving his halberd to kill the human soldiers around him. In the siege tower behind him, more and more Durachi warriors climbed onto the city wall as the vanguard. The human warriors of Gus tried to fight back. Although their warbows could not penetrate the armor of the elves, they also brought a lot of trouble. However, the appearance of the Black Ark pirates still allowed Rohan and others to easily take down the city wall. Without the protection of the archers on the city wall, the vassal army's battering rams successfully broke through the heavy city gate, revealing the shield wall of the Gus warriors who were waiting in awe. To the surprise of the Gus people, they were not attacked head-on as they had imagined. The vassal army in the front row grinned and threw some iron balls at them with slingshots. Before they could react, they were blown to pieces by the sudden explosion. Hearing the explosion not far away, Rohan's mouth showed a strange smile. Baoleo U * 100, a siege weapon from Shogun 2, priced at 20 gold coins. After wasting more than a dozen grenades on simple training for the soldiers, these grenades from another world were successfully put to use. Looking at the Gus soldiers who were screaming and howling under the city wall, Rohan couldn't help but sigh. "If I use the gunpowder of the Empire, it's a pity that I don't know why I can't make it." The once ambitious Rohan tried to use the so-called 1 sulfur, 2 nitrates and 3 charcoal formula on the internet to form a gunpowder unit for the Dark Elves. But after killing several slaves who assisted in the experiment, Rohan still couldn't make stable black powder. So Rohan bought a pistol from Nuln from the market and studied it carefully, and then he realized that the gunpowder in this world was actually a kind of black technology. The gunpowder of the Sigma Empire is completely different from the black gunpowder that Rohan is familiar with. It is more powerful and more stable. The ingredients are so complicated that even the Witch King shook his head after reading the research report submitted by Rohan and advised him to give up the research. After several years of setbacks, Rohan failed to make gunpowder, but became a small alchemist. I have to say, the world is really wonderful with the baked jade as a magic weapon to open the way. The servant army finally occupied the city wall and cheered. But Rohan on the city wall didn't laugh. He looked at this big city comparable to Lion Lake City and the Gus army standing in the center of the town in the distance, knowing that the battle had just begun. This place is not like in the game. There are a large number of conscripted militia hiding in Gus's house. In order to defend their homeland, they will definitely pose a great threat to the passing Rohan army. However, good news came one after another. Dario and other clone nobles have controlled all the city gates, and the arrow towers on them have been used by him. Secondly, the reconnaissance report of the Dark Riders showed that there were no reinforcement from the kingdom of Gus within dozens of kilometers nearby. Most importantly, the 4 Reaper crossbows and 16 Scorpion crossbows were all safe and sound, and were entering the city under the escort of the vassal army. Looking at the crossbow positions outside the city wall that were slowly moving towards this side, Rohan smiled and said to the messenger, "Let the troops start to rest, and when the crossbows are in place, bombard all the large buildings in the city first." He would not let his elf boys enter unknown urban areas. After more than 10 minutes, the crossbows entered the city gates one after another and began to stand at the right angle to bombard the city. Looking at this city not far from the coast, Rohan murmured, "Maybe when we go back this time, we should consider equipping the Black Ark with a few magic turrets. If we can use the magic bombing of the Black Ark, we can raise this city to the ground in a short time." Looking at the elf army bandaging their wounds under the city wall, Rohan sighed again. It's a pity that there are no available elves in this world, and there is no way to recruit elf soldiers. Otherwise, he would like to use the hundreds of thousands of gold coins he looted to recruit thousands of Durachi troops and conquer this continent directly by force. Since the elf warriors can't even replenish their troops, Rohan can only rely on a large number of vassal troops to take on the main force. The continuous bombing lasted for several hours, and Gus's soldiers were all praying that the shells would not fall on their heads. After firing all the crossbow arrows, the crossbows moved stones and chains to continue firing at Rohan's request until there was no large building left in this once prosperous city. Rohan ordered his vassal army to form a battle formation and carefully march towards the ruined town center. The air was filled with flames and blood, and at least hundreds of bodies were smashed into pulp and fell to the ground. From time to time, crazy Gus soldiers would rush out of the ruins, but they were easily dealt with by archers. Most of the residents' houses were intact, and fortunately there was only sporadic resistance, and no large-scale army appeared. As for the royal palace castle, which was the biggest target, a corner of the city wall had collapsed, and the rolling rubble filled the moat in front. It's almost over. Looking at the only hundreds of soldiers on the castle and the Gus knights who tried to block the gap in the castle with their shields and bodies, Rohan sighed. Baked jade fell from the sky again and landed in the Gus foot knights who vowed to defend their posts. Boom. P.S. I caught up. I slept in the afternoon, but I'm still so sleepy cack. Chapter 39. Looting. The already broken castle stone wall completely collapsed in the explosion. Looking at the Gus repeating crossbow on the wall that kept shooting arrows at the vassal army, Rohan couldn't help but sigh. Isn't this technology tree too crooked? With this kind of thing, there is no catapult or other siege weapons yet. This two-shot crossbow, which is comparable to an enlarged version of the black sharp repeating crossbow, can even penetrate the armor and skin of giants. Each magazine can fire dozens of crossbow arrows. Rohan thinks that maybe he can consider taking a few of these repeating crossbows back, and it would be best if he could equip them in large quantities. This weapon with a high rate of fire and strong penetration is simply the best weapon for killing rats. Seeing these powerful crossbows easily penetrate the shields of the vassal army and kill the soldiers hiding behind, Rohan immediately erected a magic shield to resist the arrow shot at the vassal army. Looking at the magic shield with some cracks, Rohan shouted to the leader of the Silver Mist Hunters, Anj, who was preparing to shoot not far away, "Don't damage the crossbow on the city wall, I want that thing." Hearing this, Anj silently put away the powerful enchanted crossbow in his hand and pulled out the elven scimitar at his waist. Then, under the cover of the faint mist, he swiftly crossed the moat and began to climb the city wall flexibly. Anj took the lead and rushed directly to the crossbow, while the surrounding Gus guards did not notice him. Anj came to the loader with light movements, and after easily dealing with them with a sharp blade, he aimed the crossbow at the Gus Knight, who was fighting with the vassal army below. Bang bang bang. Several 1-meter long crossbow arrows shot out from the muzzle and easily penetrated the Gus Knight wearing heavy plate armor. Looking at the Gus Knights falling down one by one like harvesting wheat, Anj's eyes flashed with a strange color. This thing is much more fun than the crossbow. The other elves followed suit and began to snatch the crossbows on the city wall, happily playing the tower defense game. Seeing this, Gus's commander hurriedly ordered to take back the crossbows on the city wall, but before these people climbed onto the city wall, they were shot into sieves by the crossbows. Everyone attack, except for the royal family members who must be alive. All others will be eliminated. After the threat of the crossbow disappeared, the panting Rohan took back the magic shield covering the heads of the vassal army and ordered a general attack. After a while, the Gus Knights in the city wall were cleaned up, leaving only pools of dark red mincemeat and broken plate armor to prove their heroic fight. The remaining remnants of the defeated army retreated into the castle, and the cries of the palace maids and the roars of the officers were heard inside, which showed that they had run out of ammunition and food. Rohan put on his sword and shield and came to the front of the team. He pointed his sword at the castle and shouted to the vassal army following behind him, "The murderer who killed your previous king is inside. Attack." King Gus, who was hiding in the castle, was shocked when he heard Rohan's shout. He hurried to the windowsill and shouted, "Wait, is there any misunderstanding?" Exclamation mark. Seeing the king slowly falling down with a crossbow arrow stuck in his head, the maid screamed in fear, "Your Majesty is dead." Hearing this, some knights of the kingdom of Clo who were preparing to attack, put down their swords, obviously not reacting to what happened. Rohan quietly gave Anj a thumbs up, and then rushed to the front of the team, and shouted to the stunned vassal army, "Maybe it's Gus's delaying tactic. Rush in. This castle and the wealth inside will belong to the kingdom of Closter." Upon hearing this, the knights' hesitation disappeared instantly, and they looked at the castle with greedy eyes, and began to order the troops to attack. Who would have a problem with money? The reason they came to participate in the revenge war was not only to avenge the old king, but more importantly, Rohan was more generous than any previous king. Since he had recruited nearly 10,000 human servants, Rohan had never commanded such a large army, so he specially asked these local nobles to help him manage the army. As a reward, Rohan gave these nobles 10% of his plundered wealth. You know, although Rohan has not yet made a complete statistics, the gold coins and slaves that filled up most of the Black Ark's cabin alone can be exchanged for at least hundreds of thousands of gold coins in Nagaland. And these hundreds of nobles who came with him, even the lowest ranking knights, can be divided into nearly 1,000 gold coins. After a while, the servants, led by the fanatical nobles, broke through the last door of the castle and rushed towards the terrified castle guards and the palace maids who tried to hide. Rohan took the Silver Mist warriors and entered the castle while the two teams were fighting. They searched the rooms to find the prince and princess hiding inside. At the same time, the other dark elves began to plunder all the gold, silver and jewelry in the castle. All the gold and silver knives, forks and lamps were quickly packed into bags, and all kinds of books were not spared. Even the chandelier on the ceiling was climbed up by the curious to retreat to see what it was made of. As for the vault, Rohan personally led people to find it. Looking at the gold bars and jewelry on the shelves, he put away his sword, and his eyes were full of the light of gold shining. "Go and cause some trouble for those human nobles, so that they won't see us moving the vault." After selling a bunch of human nobles without hesitation, Rohan picked up a gold bar as thick as his arm and threw it into the air, then stuffed it into Anja's arms and said, "Pack it. Give one to each of the Druki family members who died in the battle. They died in a foreign land to accompany me in this damn alien world. We can't treat them unfairly." "Yes, sir." Looking at the hard-working little bees who kept carrying the boxes, Rohan nodded with satisfaction. The kingdom of Gus is now completely finished. Although there are 2 other countries on this continent, Rohan plans to wait until the next time he crosses over to deal with them. It's not because he is worried about not being able to fight, but purely because the Black Ark's 2 square kilometers of cabin is almost full, and Rohan must go back to the Warhammer world to deal with the spoils first. If nothing unexpected happens, after returning to Nagaran to sell the spoils, Rohan will still need to lead the army south to the Black Coast. After all, the assembly order of the Witch King is still valid for him. Damn it, if Morathi hadn't been so stupid, the Witch King wouldn't have issued the assembly order, and I should have stayed in Grand Town to develop myself. Rohan suddenly felt a toothache when he thought about having to face the army of Shadow King Eris after he returned. That was a real elven army, and their fighting power was totally incomparable to that of humans in this world. Each of them could fight against dozens of strong men. P.S. Gwent is so fun, I almost forgot to update it. CAC. Chapter 40 Return. In the port of Jilan City, Gus Kingdom, the huge Black Ark is docked at the port, and hundreds of Durachi warriors are busy loading the spoils. Thanks to the power of the Black Ark, the navy of Gus Kingdom has almost no power to resist, and can only watch it continuously transport troops to the coastline of Gus to plunder. The adjutant is counting the number of spoils. From the smile on his face, which was originally as cold as an iceberg, it can be seen that this expedition has gained a lot. Thousands of strong captives were driven onto the ship by the slave owners. All of them curled up obediently and entered the cabin honestly. After all, on the gallows on the coastline, the hundreds of corpses floating in the wind and the knights kneeling on the ground begging bitterly are reminding them not to do stupid things. With a cucumber in his mouth, Rohan came to Dario under the slaves' fearful and angry gazes and asked, "How is it? We must have a bumper harvest this time." "Yes, sir. There are 480,000 gold coins that can be counted alone, and countless silver coins. And there are piles of gold bars and jewelry, which can be sold for at least 1 million when brought back to Nagarand. Don't be happy too soon. Such a large sum of money, the Witch King will take half, and the construction of Grand Town is also an expense. Add to that the magic turrets and behemoths I want to buy, and I will be satisfied if I can have 100,000 left." After eating all the cucumbers, Rohan couldn't help but sigh. Money is never enough. Hearing what Rohan said, Dario's excitement gradually subsided. After carefully checking the account book, he also sighed. Yes, although this money seems a lot, there are too many places to spend money. Moreover, Dario knew that the taxes collected by Rohan from Grand Town and the elf colony every month could not afford tens of thousands of human servants. Grand Town's current tax revenue is only 1,380 gold coins a month, and it cannot be collected because of the cross world. The elf colony can get 1,870 gold coins a month because of trade and goddess sacrifice. But the scale of the human servant army is still too large. The maintenance fee of nearly 10,000 gold coins a month prompted Rohan to disarm before leaving this world. Moreover, these servants will not be useful in the next fight with the High Elves. Do you expect them to drown the elven mages with a sea of people? As for long range, although their archery skills are much better than those of Britannia's peasant archers, they are still a little bit behind professional elven archers. Only those continuous fire crossbows can play a role on the battlefield, but their range is not as good as the magic crossbows that the High Elves can guide remotely, so Rohan plans to install them on chariots for street fighting. Although it may not be as good as a professional scourge walker, it is still very useful for bullying infantry and possible air units, such as giant eagles. Come to think of it, I have never eaten the meat of a giant eagle. With a whimsical idea, Rohan returned to the Admiral's castle of the Black Ark. He wanted to study the system's soldier card function and study how to disarm with the greatest efficiency. A few weeks later, Lion Lake City, the royal bedroom. "Are you leaving?" "Don't worry, I will work hard to learn how to manage this country." Isabel hugged Rohan, her red eyes full of reluctance, but she was sensible and did not choose to make trouble, but secretly prayed for Rohan's return journey. Rohan touched Isabel's head. He was reluctant to leave her, but Isabel was too weak now, so he could only comfort her. Don't worry, it won't take long, and haven't you always wanted to learn magic? Lady Mist will leave a clone to watch over the entire Albion continent, and she will teach you when the time comes. Well, don't worry, I will study hard, and when you come back, we will go to Gangsha and take back all the human treasures looted by those bad giants. After following Rohan for so long, Isabel has become a little money grubber. Since Rohan told her that Gangsha really exists, she has also been thinking about the giants' treasures. After kissing each other deeply, Rohan turned around and left without looking back. After all, he will be back in a few months, and then he will lead a more powerful elf army back to completely conquer the entire Albion. He also left 2 teams of Silver Mist guards for Isabel. At the same time, Lady Mist also promised to take care of this pious queen, enough to ensure her safety. The task of maintaining order in the occupied territory of Guth fell to the 100 teams of town militia, reorganized by Rohan. With the cheap price, this huge army of 16,000 people only needed to pay 4,000 gold coins per month, which was a drizzle for Cloister, who occupied Guth. As a result, Rohan was able to return to the Warhammer world with confidence and leave everything to Isabel. After all, even if the god of this world came down to earth, he would only be swallowed by Lady Raglia, who came and become a part of Lady Mist. After spending several days, Rohan returned to Serenport again. Everything that happened in front of him surprised Rohan secretly. There was a wooden shrine of Lady Mist at almost every corner of the intersection, and the candles and fruit offerings placed next to it all showed that these shrines were cleaned regularly. When the pedestrians on the road saw Rohan and other elves, they all took the initiative to make way, and some even saluted the elves directly, which frightened the young men. They like to be respected, but they have never been saluted by others. After all, that is an honor only for officers like Rohan or Dario. Looking at the fanatical human eyes, Rohan couldn't help but sighted Dario behind him. It's terrible. I didn't expect that these humans who had never seen God would become so pious after witnessing the glory of the lady. Maybe it's because their false gods in the past did not respond to them, but Our Lady of the Mist came in person and blessed humans, so it became like this. While chatting, the team had arrived at the port. At this time, the Black Ark had completed the loading of cargo, almost completely filling the huge cabin. Even Rohan's castle was filled with boxes for storing gold coins. In addition to the spoils and slaves that filled the cabin, Rohan also paid for some representative handicrafts and artworks from another world. Although the craftsmanship of humans is not as good as that of elves, the novel styles are enough to make the noble grandfathers of the Durachi take the initiative to pay for some. Rohan once again stood on the windowsill of the Admiral's castle. The drugs who had already gathered in the square raised their heads and waved their spoils wildly. Although they did not see the giants that Rohan mentioned, they were very satisfied with this adventure in another world, especially their pockets were full of gold coins. Rohan was laughing wildly. He waved his hand and shouted to the impatient drugs, "Boys, go home. P.S. Damn Gwent, it's such a waste of time. It's definitely Gwent's fault. It must be like this." Chapter 41, Port of Nagarand. The Port of Nagarand is also the largest trading market in the area. It gathers Durachi merchants from all over the world to sell their looted spoils. Here, as long as you have money, you can buy anything you want. Whether it is slaves of various races that can be seen everywhere, or manticores and war hydras being driven away by slave owners in the distance, they are all the most favored goods by the nobles. Ding 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 on the sentry tower, a series of bells rang, and the Durachi who were selecting goods all subconsciously reached for the weapons at their waists. However, a scream full of surprise came from the sentry tower, making everyone cheer. There is a large black ark returning. Look at its water line, it must be full of spoils. Great. Finally there are new slaves. It seems to be Admiral Rohan's world colonizers. Haven't they been sailing for less than a year? How come they are back so soon? I heard from my friend's uncle's second uncle's cousin that her nephew in the slums went to Admiral Rohan's ship and said he was going to the new world. I wonder if it's true. When Rohan was recruiting soldiers in Nagarand, he claimed that he was going to the New World to make a big fortune, which attracted the attention of many civilians and nobles. At first, not many Durachi believed Rohan's words, but considering that he had served as the chief guard of the Witch King, he fooled hundreds of civilian warriors who were willing to follow him to join him. And now, Rohan's Black Ark is back, and everyone is curious whether his so-called New World plunder was successful. After waiting for a while, the elves saw Rohan's Black Ark clearly, and also saw their compatriots waving gold, silver and jewelry on the deck to show off. Great. There is really treasure. Kane, are the gold bars in their hands real? Next time I want to go to. Whether it is the wealth of the New World or the Old World, as long as we can grab it, it is good. It was not until the Black Ark arrived at the dock that the Durachi in the port row acted and cheered, not sparing their praise and jealousy. The young men under Rohan were immersed in the sound of Handsome Boy, and the jealous and greedy eyes of others only made them more excited. Soon, the dock was full of people. After all, whether it was watching the unloading of the Black Ark's spoils, or commenting on the slaves who were driven off the ship, it was the favorite pastime of the Durachi citizens. Some nobles who heard the news grabbed the best viewing position. If there was a spoil they liked, they would buy it on the spot and never bargain. Looking at the people surrounding the Black Ark, Rohan, who was wearing black armor, smiled. After all, which admiral didn't like these generous slave owners? Start unloading. Move all the things to the port. Rohan was not worried that his goods would not be sold. After all, what he brought back were real gold and silver, as well as lively slaves. These things would never lack buyers in Nagarand. After all, there were not only local nobles in Nagarand, but also countless noble agents from the mainland, who would never be dissatisfied with the amount of spoils. Under Rohan's order, the Black Ark began to lower the deck, and the crew began to move the fully loaded cargo off the deck, and put it on the open space specially prepared by the port members. The first to be unloaded were various Albion handicrafts. Although these were a bit rough in workmanship, the novel style of the statues and utensils immediately attracted the attention of some nobles. A noble carefully picked up a crystal bottle and looked at it carefully, saying with a tone of disdain but appreciation, you can tell at a glance that it is a human workmanship. The workmanship is not even as good as Britannia's, but it looks pretty good. I want it. Of course, most of the nobles and civilians of Durachi did not have much artistic vision. They were better at selecting slaves, such as the Gus prisoners of war who were being transported off the ship, which made their eyes light up. These once glorious Gus warriors could only look at the elves around them, pinching them with horror. Are these human soldier prisoners of war? Not bad. My mine can finally add new goods. Give me 100 like this. I want to use them for the blood sacrifice to Cain. What? Not selling them to those who want the blood sacrifice? I'll double the price. Deal. These pretty boys are good. The Joy cult will like them. Please help me pack them. Thank you. As soon as the slaves got off the ship, they were snatched up by the nobles who rushed over. After all, except for Rohan, the capitalist, the slaves of other nobles were used as consumables. And because Rohan brought back high quality goods, the business was much better than that of handicrafts. Soon, nearly 10,000 slaves were snapped up. Rohan also got off the boat, looked at the cheering crowd around him, and smiled with satisfaction. This feeling of being the center of attention is actually quite good. Suddenly, Rohan noticed that a team of Nagarand black guards were walking towards this side not far away. After seeing who was leading them, Rohan smiled and greeted them. Irol, long time no see. Yes, I didn't expect to meet you again now, and I need to call you Admiral. Admiral Rohan Irol, the captain of the Black Guard, was the first partner Rohan met in the Warhammer world. Although he beat him badly in the training camp at the beginning, the two of them later became acquainted. Looking at the old acquaintances of the guards behind him, and the dozens of carriages they were pulling, Rohan suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart. Could these guys be sent by the Witch King to collect debts? Sure enough, Iril smiled and rubbed his palms, like a fly that smelled the stench of money, pointing at Rohan's Black Ark, and saying with a smile, "Don't blame me, brother. Before the Witch King left, he specifically told me to tell you that half of the money, including slaves and handicrafts, must be handed over. If we cut corners, we will deduct hundreds of years of wages." Well, threatening his acquaintances really seems like the method of the Witch King. Looking at the helpless people, Rohan sighed and said to Dario behind him, "Take them to move. It's not easy for everyone. Each of you take a gold coin before leaving." Hehe, then I won't be polite. Get lost. I'm now richer than all of you combined. Don't look at me with that disgusting look. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42, War. Iril didn't take Rohan's angry remarks seriously, and even wanted to laugh. Their group of dozens of black guards had been serving the Witch King for 100 years, and their monthly military pay alone was dozens of gold coins. How could they be surpassed so easily? However, when he saw the gold, silver and jewelry that were almost piled to the ground in Rohan Castle, he fell silent. After reviewing the amount of treasure he needed to take away, Iril showed a sly smile on his face. He came to Rohan, who looked unhappy, and comforted him. "We have to take away at least 670,000 worth of wealth this time. Do you have anything to say? Take the money and get out. Don't be so ungrateful." In order to take into account his current image as an admiral, Rohan resisted kicking him with his feet, but seeing Iril approaching him like a little bitch, he couldn't help but kick him in the ass. Iril hurried away and began to command the slaves he brought to move the good things out of Rohan's cabin. Looking at these boxes being moved out, Rohan was filled with reluctance. He had not even warmed up the money in his hands, and he had to give it to the Witch King. But Rohan did not have any such thoughts. After all, although he was cheated by the Witch King, the value of this black ark was far beyond the measurement of gold coins. After all, this black ark belonged to the Witch King. This alone was enough to deter those Durachi nobles who were greedy for Rohan's world colonizer. The unspoken rule of Nagarand: as long as you are not afraid of being hunted down, you can rob anyone, but you must never touch anything sent by the Witch King. Moreover, a large black ark like this, which is several kilometers long, would take at least thousands of years to cultivate in other families, but he directly skipped the tedious cultivation. I don't know where I read it from, but it said that the black ark can add other stone decks like a puzzle, and finally develop into a giant ship. When Rohan thought of this, his expression calmed down, which made Iril, who was peeking at him, marvel. He is indeed a man who does great things. He can remain calm after hundreds of thousands of wealth were divided up. When Iril thought of this, he remembered that the Witch King's assembly order to Rohan was still valid, so he couldn't help but remind him, "Well, there is one more thing. You can't stay in Nagarand for too long." "What the hell? You started to drive people away after taking my money, right?" Before he finished speaking, Rohan looked at Iril angrily. He had only been here for less than 2 hours. The goods were not sold out yet, and they were in a hurry to drive him away. "You have to wait until the millstone is ground before you can kill the donkey?" "No, I mean you can rest in Nagarand for a few days, and then you need to return to your fiefdom to recruit soldiers," Iril hurriedly explained. After all, the Witch King issued a call for all Nagarath, and even Rohan, who had just returned, had to go south to support. The war in the Black Mountains was still going on. The first wave of more than 10,000 Durachi troops had suffered casualties. This war, which lasted for nearly a year, was completely beyond Malekith's expectations. Since the Witch King thought that this battle was just an ordinary encounter, he did not prepare too much. Who knew that, when he arrived at the scene, and found the situation on the battlefield that could be called Northwest Shanxi, he was so angry that he almost couldn't help but turn around and leave. Good guy, not only is the army of Shadow King Eris gathering in Anahim, but even the flags of Terenlock and the Kingdom of Kaladar are also floating in the air. As for the Durachi army, surrounded by the army of the High Elves, and bombarded by various comets and lightning, it was his unfortunate mother. He himself did not dare to deal with the attacks of the 3 elven kingdoms without preparation, so how could Morathi dare to do so? Exclamation mark. The Witch King said that he could not understand this confusing behavior, but after all, she was his mother, so he could only grit his teeth and order the army to launch an attack. Due to insufficient preparation, the Durachi army, which was at a disadvantage in both manpower and combat effectiveness, was soon beaten by the Asur army, which was several times larger than itself. After paying the casualties of thousands of soldiers, they finally rescued Morathi, who wanted to continue fighting, and retreated to the desolate coast in disgrace. Oh my god, I just found out that Eris from Hammer 3 actually went to Carol and Stone Town. It happened to be the location of Grand Town that I transferred, which was too outrageous. However, Eris obviously did not want to miss the opportunity to beat the dog when it was down, so after the discussion of the three-nation coalition, he chose to continue to attack the desolate coast, and at the same time, issued an invitation to all high elven kingdoms, the opportunity to wipe out the evil dark elves in one fell swoop and safeguard the great cause of the unification of the elves has come. For a time, except for the crazy jailer Iltharion, who was busy looking for greenskins to fight, almost all the high elf kingdoms responded to the call. Since the whole of Ulthuan was in motion, the elven nobles who were still playing house with court conspiracies have all thrown themselves into this great war against Druki. In the crisis again, the angry Witch King had to issue a general mobilization order, and all the Dreadlords and Black Ark admirals must participate in the war. Even the Black Arks, that were looting far away in the old world, were urgently summoned to launch an attack on Ulthuan to relieve the pressure on the front line of the desolate coast. Rohan was stunned to listen to Irel's narration of the war that had taken place in the past 6 months. He could not help but muttered, "Why do I feel that your side is more exciting than my adventure in the other world? Don't mention it." You may not have seen the color in the eyes of the Witch King when he came back to recruit soldiers that night. It was even more green and cold, like a ghost fire. The two of them carefully hid aside and chewed their ears, looking at the treasures being loaded onto the carriage and transported to the Black Castle. Irel sighed, "Your money is really a timely reign. I heard that some Fear Lords have complaints because of Moratha's unauthorized war. In order to stabilize the morale of the army, Kane's assassins have killed the entire families of several lords. Oh my god, I didn't expect so many things to happen after I left for a while. Are there still soldiers to recruit in Nagarand?" The soldiers who came back from the slums and the mountains were recruited when the Witch King came back. The rest are the private soldiers of the nobles. You still have to recruit them in your own fiefdom. Hearing this, Rohan felt a toothache. The number of soldiers he brought back was not large to begin with, and he was hoping to recruit some high-level soldiers to transform into Silver Mist warriors, but he came to the wrong place. However, looking at the manticores and war hydras in the port square, Rohan still wanted to make sure he didn't come here for nothing, so he asked unwillingly, "Those giant beasts?" "Don't even think about it. The Witch King has contracted all the giant beasts for the next year at a high price. There's no way you can get a share. TSK. PS. I caught up. I'm relieved." Chapter 43 Heading south. Is there really nothing left? Selling some harpies is fine. No more. All contracted by Lord Witch King. You should go to other stores. Looking at the high-level slave owner shaking his head helplessly, Rohan asked unwillingly, "There must be some hidden treasures, right? I'll pay double the price." Hearing this, the already impatient slave retorted, "Look, where are the extra behemoths now? They are all caught in the mountains. You complain about the lack of them, but I complain about the insufficient quantity." Okay. Rohan could only helplessly return to the streets of Nagarand and wander around, sighing at the snowflakes flying in the sky. This was already the 3rd day he stayed in Nagarand. During these few days, all the spoils on the Black Ark had been sold, minus the ones taken away by Irel, totaling 720,000 gold coins. Just when Rohan, who had obtained a huge sum of money, was ready to show off his skills in the mall, he found that he could not buy anything. All the monsters were taken by the Witch King, and the slums were empty. There was no army to recruit. Although there were still a few magic turrets for sale, the high price and long installation time forced Rohan to give up and choose to spend 14,000 gold coins to buy 80 Reaper crossbows to defend the deck. Apart from that, Rohan never found anything worth buying. After all, his subordinates didn't even blunt their knives in this expedition to the other world. There was no way. After thousands of years of war, the weapons and equipment of Durachi were famous for their solidity and durability. In the words of the proud masters of the Craftsman Guild, Drach's products are definitely of excellent quality that can withstand long wars, unlike the crude and flashy stuff like a Sir. After all, for Durachi, weapons are power. After a tour of the entire Nagarand, Rohan just bought some alchemical materials and returned to the Black Ark helplessly, ready to set sail back to Grand Town. As soon as he got on board, Rohan saw that Dario was arranging several female sorcerers hired to help repair the damaged rock deck. After seeing Rohan, Dario skillfully picked up a booklet and reported, "The damage to the deck is not serious. The crew members who are visiting relatives and resting have also assembled. It will only take a few hours to set sail. Good job, we need to rush back to Grand Town as soon as possible to recruit soldiers and then go south to the Broken Coast to help the Witch King." After pushing away a female sorceress who wanted to get close to him, Rohan entered the Admiral's castle without changing his expression, ready to study whether he could recruit soldiers from the system. There has always been a limitation to the system's recruitment, that is, there must be enough population to convert and recruit soldiers, and then use the money from the small treasury to recruit soldiers that are cheaper than in reality. But because of this, Rohan lacked the population of Durachi in the other world, and could not even make up for the personnel, so he could only rely on the vassal army. After lying on the big bed, Rohan opened the system panel and looked at the recruitment column of the Black Ark. In the pirate cabin, the Black Ark pirates and the Black Ark pirates, hand crossbows, are all available for recruitment because they are docked in Nagarand. Rohan looked at the Black Ark pirates, hand crossbows. These agile and good at boarding Durachi pirates not only have excellent shooting skills, but also have a good melee level. Bring a few teams of hand crossbows. The bonus of mobile shooting and Sea Dragon Cloak is not weaker than that of the general High Elf Navy. For Rohan, who owns the Black Ark, attacking the supply ships and ports of the High Elves is his main responsibility, and the front battlefield should belong to the Dreadlords. Therefore, what Rohan needs now is not the anti-line units such as the Dread Spearmen, but the melee output such as the Dark Swordsmen and the Black Ark Pirates. The Dark Swordsman in Hammer 3 has been strengthened. The weapon power of 35 is more suitable for hacking and slashing. If you have friends who play melee, you can try to see which team is on top. Looking at the silver glowing Silver Mist Warrior sequence under the Temple of the Lady of the Mist building, Rohan couldn't help but sigh. Due to the lack of enough Dread Spearmen and Dark Shadows, Rohan has wasted at least a dozen promotion opportunities. Moreover, Rohan also left 2 teams of Silver Mist Guards to Isabel. Therefore, all the Silver Mist Warriors in Rohan's hands now only have 2 teams of Silver Mist Guards and 1 team of Silver Mist Hunters as personal soldiers. Lack of soldiers. Even if I have money now, I have nowhere to use it. Looking at the Black Ark pirates who came to the Black Ark from Nagarand one after another to sign up for the army, as well as the expressionless faces of those citizens, Rohan couldn't help but sigh. According to Irol, the battle in the south has been completely crazy, and tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of elven troops are gathering. A few 100,000 should be achievable. After all, in the official novel, 1,000,000 dark elves can be described as crossing a river. I think my number of a few 100,000 should not be too much, right? And if we rashly go south to participate in the battle with our own army of less than 2,000, we will be just a small dish for this feast of killing that can feed Cain. According to Rohan's plan, at least 3,000 troops need to be recruited to survive the upcoming melee, and the entire available population of Grand Town. Rohan could not help but turn his gaze to Grand Town. Since he had arrived in the Warhammer world, Rohan could view and control the development of Grand Town from a distance. Grand Town, level 2 town population. 1674 taxes. 1380 gold, basic income plus 500 gold, iron ore income plus 300, buildings, dark elf mansion, population plus 150/month, replenishment rate plus 5%, recruiting hall, recruitable. Dark Swordsman, Black Sharp Crossbowman. When Rohan was in the other world, Grand Town was managed by a person appointed by the Witch King, so even if Rohan was not there, the whole town was thriving. However, he never seemed to say that it was allowed to build a recruitment building. looking at the recruitment hall in Grand Town that was built at an unknown time, and the 8 teams of defenders whose number was completely wrong, Rohan suddenly had some doubts in his heart. Did the system recruit soldiers privately? But then Rohan threw this idea out of his mind. According to the weak character of the system, before doing such a thing, it will definitely tell him first and act only after getting permission. So what is the problem? Although he didn't know what happened, Rohan was not panicked at all, because his total force completely exceeded the defenders, and he was not worried about accidents. 3 teams of Black Ark Pirates, 4 teams of Dark Swordsmen, 2 teams of Silver Mist Guards, 1 team of Silver Mist Hunters, 5 teams of Black Sharp Crossbowmen, Shield, 3 teams of Black Ark Pirates, Hand Crossbows, 1 team of Dark Riders. PS. Looking for Ciri? Where can Ciri play Gwent? Chapter 44 Rebellion. Little did Rohan know that at this moment, in the town of Gran, which he had been dreaming about, a coup d'etat against him was taking place. Friends, I have received news that the Dreadlord who never gets involved, Rohan, will be back on his Black Ark in a few days. In the Tower Hall of Grand Town, the lordship that originally belonged to Rohan was occupied by a black-haired man. He was saying to his accomplices around him with a serious face, he has nearly 2,000 combat veterans under his command. If we wait until he returns to Grand Town, the consequences will be disastrous. Don't worry, my lord, we have assembled an army of nearly 1,000 people. Relying on the cover of stone walls and arrow towers, we will be able to defend the town left by your sister. A lackey was explaining to the lord the results of their labor for more than half a year with a flattering smile, and proudly introduced, my lord, we have successfully recruited 8 loyal infantry regiments. They are all recruited from local residents of Grand Town, and can be absolutely trusted. Very good. If my sister Anity was still alive, she would definitely not want to see the lordship of our family being taken away by an outsider. The black-haired man nodded in satisfaction. He was Anity's distant cousin. When he was in Nagarand, he managed a port in an orderly manner. The Witch King sent him to manage Grand Town. He must have taken a fancy to his talent. Grand Town was his family's hereditary territory, so he should be in charge of it, not Rohan who came out of nowhere. Little did this self-righteous young elf know that the reason why the Witch King sent him to Grand Town was simply to let Rohan deal with the aftermath. Just when the people in the Lord's Hall were complacent, a surprised figure suddenly came from outside the hall, and several Drachi defenders shouted excitedly, Lord Rohan's Black Ark is back. Great, I heard that the fighting in the south has been going on for several months. This time I must gain glory on the battlefield. Can we go plunder Althorn? I haven't seen new Sir slaves in a long time. Hearing the heated conversation of the elves below, several dark elves in the tower, who were preparing to rebel couldn't help but have a lot of questions on their heads. Why did they sound like they welcomed Rohan so much? After reacting, the black-haired elf pulled the lackey next to him in front of him, looked at the lackey with fear in his eyes, and shouted, Idiot. Didn't I ask you to ruin Rohan's reputation among the residents? Why are there so many people admiring him? My lord, I really tried my best. I have wasted a lot of time in the past few months just to persuade those stubborn troops. Although the current garrison in Grand Town was not recruited from the system, it was still judged as its own army because it was stationed in Grand Town. And to persuade the system's army to betray the host, it is more or less difficult. After thinking for a moment, another dog-headed military advisor next to him said to the furious black-haired man with his few wisdoms, It doesn't matter. As long as the army is willing to listen to our command, we still have hope of turning the tables. Let the soldiers go up to the city wall and prepare for battle. Yes, sir. I can arrange the army right away. Hearing what his military advisor and lackey said, the black-haired man snorted coldly, looking at the lackey who was begging for mercy in his hand and said, This is your last chance. Hold on to the port. As long as you can resist Rohan's attack, Grand Town will belong to me. On the Black Ark. Through the telescope, Dario saw the Durachi defenders who were gathering on the stone wall of Grand Town Port, and shouted to Rohan on the castle with an ugly face, Sir, something is wrong. I smell the smell of betrayal. Looking at the Grand Town defenders who were still under his control on the system panel, Rohan was not panicked at all. After all, he really wanted to see what tricks the famous lord who had developed Grand Town well could do. After arriving on the deck, Rohan waved his hand to Dario, who was on guard, and said, "Relax, my good lieutenant. Those defenders of Grand Town will never betray me. They have no reason. What good conditions can a person who came to power by rebellion offer?" On the stone wall, the black-haired man was wearing the armor of the Lord of Fear. Since he did not have the authorization of the Lord Witch King, his behavior had already reduced the impression of him by many residents. The black-haired man gave an impassioned speech to the soldiers, declaring that as long as he came to power, he would share the wealth of Grand Town with them, but was met with the cold eyes of all the soldiers. "Please, they are originally residents of Grand Town. Do you want them to rob their family and friends after the battle?" Moreover, many crew members on Rohan's Black Ark were residents of Grand Town. Why should they betray the original lord for the reckless ambition of a rebel? Seeing the distrustful looks from the surrounding Durichi, the black-haired man was a little annoyed, but now that Rohan's Black Ark had appeared at the port, he could only try his best and ordered, "Soldiers of Grand Town, you have all been taken care of by my sister Anati. Would you rather let a stranger like Rohan inform you than let Anati's brother, me?" This made some elves who were not firm in their positions hesitate. Indeed, although the former Lord Dinity had a bad temper, she always handled the conflicts between residents fairly and seriously, and was a good lord. Moreover, she fought for Grand Town until the last moment. At that time, many residents witnessed Anati being drowned by the endless sea of rats, but she fought until the last moment. Seeing the somewhat shaken soldiers, the black-haired man was delighted. Just as he was about to strike, while the iron was hot, the next voice suddenly came from under the stone wall. "Is this a new welcome ceremony? I want to know who this Lord of Fear is. Rohan, how dare you come alone?" Looking at the lonely man under the stone wall, the black-haired man was surprised and happy. He didn't expect that this fool would dare to be so arrogant. Couldn't he see the nearby defenders? Rohan raised his eyebrows and looked at the other party. With the guidance ring and the system guarantee, he was not panicked at all. Instead, he looked at the black-haired man with interest and said, "I'm going back to my own home. Why do I need to bring so many people? P.S. I'm in a very bad state. Shanghai suddenly dropped from 20 degrees to below zero. My hands were so cold that they hurt when I stretched out the quilt. My head was also swollen. Please forgive me for the poor writing." Chapter 45 Farce. After confirming that he still had control over the system army, Rohan couldn't help but look at the arrogant black-haired man on the stone wall with a teasing look, and asked curiously, "Please allow me to ask, who are you?" "I'm the new Lord of Dread of Grand Town. The Witch King personally appointed me to come to Grand Town to replace my sister." Rohan raised his eyebrows. He had never heard that Anati had a younger brother before. He couldn't help but shouted to Dario on the Black Ark, "Did you hear that? This guy said he is Anati's younger brother. Is it true?" "What? I have never heard Lady Anati mention that she has a younger brother. Then he is fake." Looking at the unguarded Rohan below, the black-haired man on the stone wall could no longer suppress his inner excitement. As long as Rohan died, he could become the Lord of Grand Town with full justification. Then he gently patted the arm of a black crossbowman next to him and said, "Quick, shoot and kill him. As long as you kill him, you will be rewarded with 500 gold coins after the task is completed." The selected black crossbowman rolled his eyes and ignored the mentally ill-acting lord. Instead, he lowered his head and began to wipe the crossbow in his hand. 500 gold coins, which is equivalent to his salary for 30 years, really made him excited. But the problem is that the lifespan of elves is a full 1,000 years, and with the looting from following Rohan to the battlefield in the south, he is confident that he can make so much money in 10 years. Moreover, they have seen the comrades on the Black Ark who are showing off with all kinds of gold and silver jewelry, which shows that Rohan is indeed a capable lord. In this case, why should they betray Rohan, who can lead them to wealth and is generous, and turn to help this ignorant agent? He can still tell the difference between a full meal and a full meal. Seeing the disdain on the face of the elf he had chosen, the black-haired man had a vague feeling of uneasiness in his heart. Feeling uneasy, he wanted to get down the stone wall, but found that his way was blocked by several fierce spearmen holding shields. Seeing this situation, the black-haired man drew out the rapier at his waist in fear, pointed at the soldiers who were approaching him, and shouted in a sharp voice, "Do you want to betray the will of the Lord Witch King? Return to your posts immediately, and prepare to meet the enemy." A captain walked out of the crowd with a head in his hand, threw the head at the man's feet with a grim smile, and taunted, "You don't really think that you can rely on sweet words to make everyone betray the Lord for you, right? No. You can't do this." Looking at the dog-legged head rolling to his feet, the black-haired man wanted to escape in fear, but he was shot through the calf by the previously designated black sharp crossbowman. Hearing the sound coming from the stone wall, Rohan raised his head curiously. Although he had guessed about the rebellion, he didn't know whether the army was involved. After a while, when the noise above subsided, Rohan could not help but ask loudly, "Young men, you can't just leave your lovely lord outside the door. What happened?" "Nothing, sir. It's just that the acting lord's health seems to be not well. He fainted inexplicably. We will open the door for you immediately." Interesting. Did he really obey, or was he pretending to surrender to lure himself in and be killed? The soldiers on the Black Ark had already noticed that something was wrong. Seeing Rohan standing alone under the stone wall for so long, and his companions on the wall did not open the door, this was very disrespectful. Dario began to land with the assembled soldiers. After hearing the shouts from the stone wall, he hurriedly drew his weapon and reminded, "My lord, it might be a trap. Why don't you let me take people in to check the situation first? Don't worry, let's see what tricks they want to play." Look, they opened the door. The iron and wooden door was slowly opened, and a captain whom Rohan did not know came out carrying a tied-up black-haired man. He knelt in front of Rohan and said, "My lord, I'm the commander of the new legion formed after you left. Unfortunately, I have to inform you of a piece of news. While you were sailing out to plunder, this guy occupied your lord's hall and tried to start a shameful rebellion. Oh, so my loyal captain, you caught him in front of me, is that right?" "Yes, my lord. I ask you to hand this guy over to me. I have 9 ways to kill him." 9. Looking at the captain's confident face, Rohan shook his head and said nothing more. He kicked the terrified man to the ground and then returned to the Lord's Hall. This kind of small character is not worth wasting his time. He now needs to hurry up to gather the army and then go south to help the Witch King. Dario followed behind Rohan, and after noticing Rohan's small gesture, he ignored the shocked captain next to him and directly kicked the relieved black-haired man on the ground in the head. Shaking the white brains on his toes with some disdain, Dario took out a bag of Rohan's exclusive corpse powder and explained to the still confused leader, "Our lord always likes to root out the evil. If you don't want to be arrested as a traitor, don't say anything about keeping the captives for fun in the future." Yes, sir. I'll have someone take his body." Looking at the body on the ground, that was gradually turned into blood, after being sprinkled with powder by Dario, the new leader couldn't help swallowing his saliva. After not seeing him for a long time, Dario turned into a ruthless man. No. It should be said that Rohan, who can train Dario to be like this, is a real ruthless man. Back in the Lord's room in Grand Town, when Rohan was about to throw himself on the soft big bed he had been thinking about for a long time, he suddenly grabbed the edge of the bed and stopped abruptly. After seeing the traces of sleeping on his harpy fur bed and manticore leather mattress, Rohan's face immediately showed a disgusted expression. This big bed originally belonged to Anati. Later, Rohan spent money to buy a new set of bedding. He hadn't used it for a few times before it was ruined by others. Isn't this a kind of NTR? Someone throw this bed away and get a new one. After ordering several female slaves who came from nowhere to throw away the mattress, Rohan had to return to the chair in the Lord's Hall and prepare to study the development of Grand Town. But then, Rohan saw that the master chair he ordered others to make was gone, and it was replaced by an exaggerated white lion leather chair. Rohan felt his blood pressure rise sharply. He pinched his philtrum, supported his hand on the table and murmured, "No, something is wrong." Chapter 46 Homesickness. It took several hours for the maids to clean the room, and Rohan was finally able to lie on his big bed to check the system panel. What could be more reassuring than lying in bed and drawing the lottery? Of course, it's to curse the Ratman together. There is a group of dirty ratmen on the other side of the mountain and the sea. They kill people and set fires and they always lose the battle. They live miserably in that dirty wasteland of demon rats. They are timid and cowardly and love to betray each other. Humming a little tune, Rohan calmly ignored the damn curse of the horned rat and started a new round of card drawing. Excellent silver sword, the exclusive weapon of the demon hunter. Anti-big bonus plus 20%. Weapon power plus 35. Priced at 5,000 gold coins. Dragon egg fossil. A dragon egg that has completely lost its vitality and can only be used for viewing. Priced at 20 gold coins. A bag of sugar-free chocolate. Very bitter, but a healthy food with zero fat. Priced at 5 gold coins. As a newly promoted millionaire, after reading the product introduction on the card, Rohan bought all the cards without hesitation. Wait, dragon egg? After buying it, Rohan finally realized it and hurriedly sat up to look at the dragon egg fossil that appeared on the bed. He couldn't help asking, "System, is this dragon egg the one from Game of Thrones?" Ding. No, it's a dragon egg fossil from Jurassic Park. It's really only for viewing. Please don't imagine too much. That's right. After all, it's only sold for 20 gold coins, so you can't expect it to be very practical. Hearing this, Rohan felt a pity in his heart, but then he looked at the beautifully crafted silver sword on the bed, the chocolate next to it. Damn it, feeling the plastic packaging in his hand, and looking at the big sun written on it, Rohan's face showed a nostalgic smile. Tearing open the plastic packaging bag, revealing pure black chocolate pills, Rohan carefully put them into his mouth and tasted them carefully, feeling the bitter but silky chocolate in his mouth. It has been 102 years since he came to the Warhammer world. He is no longer the decadent young man he used to be, but a qualified Durachi warrior. The taste of home. Can I go back? If I go back, are my parents okay? If I go back, will I take the Chaos God with me? All these years have been lingering in Rohan's mind. After all, in his previous life, he was not like other fellow travelers who died right after they came. In his previous life, Rohan, as a good young man with a perfect family and a happy life, had no reason to stay in the Warhammer world to struggle. And in this life, after putting the remaining chocolates into his waist bag, Rohan picked up the silver sword on the bed and looked at it. It must be said that the workmanship of this sword is one of the best swords even compared to the elves, and there are 2 grooves engraved on the sword body, which can be used to inlay inscriptions. Moreover, the sword Rohan is using now is the weapon uniformly distributed to the Black Guards when he was the captain of the guards. Although the workmanship is also excellent, it can't stand the attribute bonus. After taking off the old friend who had accompanied him for many years, Rohan took the silver sword in his hand and looked at it carefully. Silver sword, calling you like this doesn't seem to be very respectful. From now on, I will call you Shangfang sword. Touching the Shangfang in his hand, Rohan was not ashamed of his bad name. Instead, he proudly inserted the Shangfang into the scabbard on his waist and walked out of the door. Outside the house, Dario was sitting on the chair symbolizing the Lord with a helpless look on his face. This was the right that Rohan gave him after he had served Rohan loyally for 2 years, but he didn't want it. Due to the previous rebellion, Rohan decided to keep Dario in Grand Town as the mayor to manage the development and defense of Grand Town. Although it seemed a bit of a waste to do such a small thing with Dario's talent, Rohan really couldn't find a suitable candidate for this job. Moreover, Dario's current strength was no longer able to face the increasingly brutal battlefield. His current strength was at most the level of a regiment commander, not even an officer. Dario was unwilling to stay in Grand Town. He longed for war and adventures in another world, but he also knew that his strength was not outstanding, so he had no choice but to accept it. At the beginning, he prayed to the Lady of the Mist, but received no response. Rohan also went to Rajlia for this, but Rajlia also said that Dario's strength had reached its limit. Looking at Dario's frustrated figure who was burying himself in the documents as high as a hill, Rohan felt a little guilty. It seemed that he was indeed a bit too much. Seeing Rohan coming out of the room, Dario immediately stood up and saluted, but Rohan just waved his hand and handed his former sword to Dario and said, "My adjutant, your loyalty has withstood the test. Now I give you the position of acting lord. I swear, I will do my best to find a way to improve your strength. There are so many magical items in the other world, and there are countless ways to improve strength. Rohan doesn't believe that he can't find a way to improve Dario's strength. If he can't fight, when he becomes stronger, he will go to the world of the Lord of the Rings to learn how to forge the supreme ring and make a ring that seals the power of God for Dario. Seeing the determination in Rohan's eyes, Dario was also moved. He was just a captain of the city defense before. How could he be trusted so much? Lord Rohan, I swear allegiance to you in the name of Lady of the Mist. I'm not afraid of the power of a powerful enemy. I'm loyal and brave. Because of the love of the goddess, I will not lie, even if I face death, and I will protect the spirit of the territory without losing it. Ahem. Is it a bit shameful to write this? Your language talent makes me astonished, Dario. I can't say a solemn and gorgeous oath like you. I can only say that from now on, there will always be a place for you by the bonfire in my castle, and as long as you are still alive, I will never abandon you. Then Rohan handed the sword to Dario, and after saying goodbye solemnly, he left the Lord's Tower and came to the town square. At this time, nearly 3,000 Durachi warriors were gathering in the square, and some relatives and friends were saying goodbye. They had just been together for less than a day and only had time to hand over the looted wealth to their families. They all knew that this trip was different from the previous looting. They would fight those disgusting Asur. Compared with the noble families in the eyes of palace fighting dramas, the civilian families of Durachi are relatively more concerned about their families, even if they will ruthlessly get rid of other people's families. P.S. The next is the big fight plot, but I really don't have the confidence to write it well. It's too cold, and I seem to be addicted to Gwent. It's really terrible cack. Gambling is harmful to people. Chapter 47 Fire Dragon. After the Durachi warriors said goodbye to their relatives and friends, Rohan led the soldiers to board the Black Ark again, preparing to go south to support the Witch King. After several weeks of sailing, Rohan stood on the top of the Admiral's castle, feeling the biting sea breeze that cut through his face like a sharp knife, and the broken coastline in the distance that looked like the surface of the moon, and murmured, the desolate coast, full of reefs and deserted islands. It's hard to imagine that there are people living in such a place. Without Dario by his side, Rohan, who was used to being a hands-off boss, had to do everything himself and became the hardest working person on the entire Black Ark. Slaves are not considered people. Fortunately, most of the Durachi elves are good elves who like to be self-sufficient, so apart from some minor disputes, there were no major problems that Rohan was worried about. There was a thick fog floating on the sea, and even the Black Ark was a little lost. From time to time, the roar of hitting the reefs came from the bottom of the ship. Rohan had already put on his armor. The Durachi warriors were also ready, and the Harvester crossbow gunners were looking vigilantly at the surrounding sea, on guard against the possible appearance of the High Elf fleet. The entire Black Ark fell into an unprecedented silence, with no other noises, except the sound of the sea breeze and the waves. Just as Rohan was searching the sea with the telescope, an observer suddenly came from the watchtower and reported a bad news. My lord, we can see the desolate fortress. The army of the High Elves is besieging the fortress. It's the flag of Alaster. How many Asur troops are there? The fog is too thick. We can only see that there are 4 siege towers attached to the city wall. There is also a dragon. For your information, the Sun Dragon, Silver Moon Dragon and Star Dragon are the age classifications of dragons of different ages by the High Elves. It is outrageous that they are directly made into breath attributes in the game. A dragon? Rohan was so scared that he hurriedly climbed to the watchtower. His mind recalled the movies he had watched in his previous life, Smaug and the Lord of the Rings and the Flying Dragons and A Song of Ice and Fire. If it was really a flying dragon of dozens or hundreds of meters long, then Rohan would choose to evacuate without hesitation and return to this sea area when it was safe. You know, these real dragons are not the 2-legged lizards domesticated by orcs, but monsters that will become infinitely stronger with the passage of time. Legend has it that there is a giant dragon living in the Plains of Bones, Omra the Fear, who existed even before the old ones came. That is a real monster. His physique is as huge as a mountain, and a slight flick of his tail is enough to smash a mountain. Although there is a suspicion of watering down the number of words, I want to talk about the classification of dragons here. There are 3 official classifications of dragons. One is the age classification of the High Elves: Flame Sun Dragon, Silver Moon Dragon, Shining Star Dragon. The prefix here does not represent the attributes of the dragon, but only the age of the dragon. The second is the arrangement method of other races: young dragon, adult dragon, giant dragon, imperial dragon. The third is according to the attributes of the dragon. Their attributes will affect the character of the dragon, but due to the influence of chaos and substone, there are many messy types. Legend has it that the ancestor of the dragon is a black dragon named Dark Carzinus. Perhaps because of the colorful black, his descendants began to have pigments of various colors in their bodies, which determined the nature of the dragon. For example, the red fire-breathing dragon has a rather violent personality, the forest dragon has an erratic temperament, and can spit out poisonous clouds. The purple storm dragon has an arrogant temperament, and can spit out lightning breath with amazing lethality. In addition, there are black dragons that have been transformed by the dark magic of the dark elves, dimensional fire dragons that have been mutated by the influence of dimension stones, and chaos dragons that have been twisted by the embrace of chaos, etc. Thinking of the various legendary dragons recorded in the books, Rohan hurriedly took out the telescope and looked at the desolate fortress that was emitting dazzling flames. On the solid giant wall, thousands of Durachi warriors were fighting brutal hand-to-hand combat with the Asur bastards who tried to climb the wall. The black sharp crossbowmen huddled inside the wall, dodging the arrows in the sky, while fighting back with the crossbows in their hands. In the air, a fire dragon more than 10 meters long was using its wings to blow away the crossbow arrows shot at it, and then devoured one Durachi defender after another with its flame breath. Many soldiers howled and tried to use shields to resist, but the shields made of black iron could not withstand such high temperature, and soon turned into molten iron, and melted into the ground. Inside the fortress, several Reaper crossbows were shooting at the flying dragon in the sky, and the huge spearheads left bloody scars on the flying dragon's body. The flying dragon roared and landed directly in the fortress, turned around and swept the crossbow into pieces. On the Black Ark, everyone looked at the fortress not far away that had become a sea of fire, and fell into silence. Even the bravest warriors felt powerless. There was no way. The oppression of the dragon was too strong. The roar that resounded through the sky alone was enough to make some recruits' eyes full of confusion. Looking at the desolate fortress in the distance, Rohan was a little hesitant. To be honest, his mission should be to find the Witch King to report the situation. But the role of the desolate fortress is self-evident. As the last entrance to the Doomsday Forest, the strategic significance of this fortress is naturally very important. Although he didn't quite understand why the Witch King didn't send extra troops to support, Rohan couldn't just watch the desolate fortress being destroyed. Once Asur's coalition forces entered the Doomsday Forest, the Claw Coast, where his town of Gran was located, would also be within the attack range of the powerful navy of Ulthuan. Damn it, get ready for battle. We can't let the disgusting Asur take over the desolate fortress, otherwise they can use the entire desolate coast as a springboard to attack Gran Town. After explaining the current situation to the somewhat retreating recruits and the eager veterans, Rohan took the black halberd from Anj and shouted, "For the sake of Gran Town, we can't let Asur's plan succeed." The Black Ark began to accelerate, and the crossbows were ready to shoot. Hundreds of crossbows were aimed at the air in unison. In addition to the powerful Reaper crossbows, there were more than a dozen crossbows from the Kingdom of Gus, which were also moved to the deck by Rohan. Although the range of the rapid-fire crossbows is not as good as that of the Reaper, Rohan believes that the barrage of these crossbows with amazing firing speed is enough to make the young fire dragon drink a pot. P.S. Does anyone read this little popular science? If no one reads it, I will try not to write it in the future CAC. Chapter 48 White Lion. The siege of Desolate Fortress continued, and the blood of countless elves covered the walls. This bloody feast was enough to make Cain smile. The eyes of the Durachi warriors flashed with purple madness. The power given by Cain made them addicted, but they didn't know that the long-term fatigue battle had already made their bodies on the verge of collapse. In the high elf camp outside the fortress, White Lion, Alastair stroked a white wall lion beside him, and watched the fierce battle on the wall expressionlessly. He knew that these disgusting fellows had been exhausted by his fierce and swift attack, and now was the best time to annihilate them in one fell swoop. Just as Alastair picked up his battle axe and prepared to lead his brave White Lion guards to launch an attack to completely overwhelm the defense line of Durachi, a series of alarms came into his ears. Emergency. There is a large black ark on the sea that is landing here. Catapults. Turn the catapults to the coast. They are approaching the shore. Damn, there are at least thousands of Durachi. We need to organize a defense line. The elven nobles commanded the army to turn in a panic. Some contradictory orders made the soldiers confused and gradually fell into chaos. Roar. When the lion next to Alastair looked at the noisy tent and made a loud roar, the nobles quieted down and looked at Alastair, who was sitting in the first seat, looking at the Durachi army landing not far away and the black flag he had never seen before. Alastair said with some disdain, "Calm down, gentlemen, it's just a nobody and his equally vulnerable army. There's no need to stop the soldiers attacking the city." Hearing this, the nobles came to their senses. Yes, the current situation is that they have the upper hand. There is no need to panic. Looking at the nobles who have regained their spirits, Alastair couldn't help but sigh. It has been too long since Ulthuan has had such a large-scale war. These elven nobles who grew up in peacetime are all good at court affairs, but when it comes to leading troops to fight, haha. Alastair picked up the giant axe and put it on his shoulder, patted the white lion beside him, and the white lion immediately ran out of the tent and roared. Roar. Meow. A large group of white lions instantly emerged from the water grass nearby. Some of them still had blood stains on their mouths, and their dark yellow eyes made the surrounding Asur swallow their saliva. At the same time, heavy footsteps were heard in the big tent, calming down the nobles who were still a little panicked, their eyes full of awe. After walking out of the big tent, Alastair looked at the group of armored warriors wearing white lion robes gathered in front of him, and couldn't help shouting, "Warriors, some dirty Durachi have begun to land on the shore. They want to rescue those Durachi who are being roasted by dragon flames. This won't do. Let's defeat them." Roar. Sure, the silver mist hunters hide, and when we start a head-on battle with Asur, we can attack their archers and crossbows. The dark swordsman is in the middle. The fearful spearman is responsible for covering both sides. The black ark pirates pay attention to the guerrilla movement. The silver mist guards and I will protect the crossbowmen. And remember not to rush out of the line rashly. Rohan also began pre-war deployment. Due to the presence of the dragon, Rohan's goal was to attract the attention of the high elves rather than actively attack. Hearing Rohan's deployment, and asked with some doubts, the range of the Asur Eagle Claw crossbow is much higher than ours. What if they hide in the army and don't come out? Don't worry, the enemy officers don't know that our black ark is not equipped with magic turrets, so they will definitely take the initiative to stick to us and seek opportunities for hand-to-hand combat. In order to drive the black ark, Rohan has read a lot of land battle reports between Asur and Durachi under the cover of the black ark's artillery. Most of the commanders on the side of the high elves directly ordered the army to fight with Durachi's front to prevent large-scale bombardment by magic turrets. Although some admirals may order bombings on both sides of the melee at the same time, in most cases the admirals will still order hand-to-hand combat. Alastair did think so. He believed that Rohan was a newly appointed admiral and should not order magic turrets to bombard the army in the melee. It's a pity that he didn't know that he had encountered a freak black ark equipped with only close-range crossbows. Hehe. After listening to Rohan's story, the other legion leaders all showed a sly smile on their faces. As long as the High Elves army really took the initiative to approach Rohan's army, the hundreds of Reaper crossbows equipped with scattered crossbows and the close-range burst crossbows with amazing firing speed on the Black Ark would definitely give the High Elves a big surprise. After confirming the battle plan, Rohan came to the center of the army with a halberd and a shield, eager to see the success of his plan. Just when Rohan was still thinking about the loopholes in his plan, he suddenly saw several blue streams of light across the sky and flew towards Durachi's army. Rohan reacted immediately, raised his right hand, and erected a protective shield to support it in the air. Bang! The ice blue protective shield was instantly smashed with several cracks, and 4 huge magic crossbows were stuck in the cracks and kept rotating, destroying the magic of the protective shield. Is this Asur's crossbow? It can shoot so far. Rohan used the magic power in his body to support the protective shield while taking out the telescope from his arms, looking at the eagle claw crossbow being loaded in the distance and secretly gasping in amazement. In the army of the High Elves, Alastair looked at the protective shield that appeared above the army of Druki, frowned slightly and said, "Sure enough, there is magic, so hurry up and get close to it and fight." Thinking of this, Alastair's face couldn't help but show a sense of pride. As long as they can get close to melee, he believes that he and his White Lion guards can easily split these dirty fellows in half. As loyal guards of the Phoenix King, they will use their woodcutter axes to teach these self-degrading rebellious fellows a lesson. As the siege of the desolate fortress was still going on, Alastair did not withdraw the archers who continued to accompany him on the front line, but instead let the White Lions ambush. Under the cover of 8 crossbows, Alastair led 2,000 fully armed Asur troops and 200 powerful White Lion guards, and rushed directly towards Rohan's army. Full speed ahead. Try to defeat them in one round. The charging High Elf soldiers did not notice that the hundreds of crossbows on the Black Ark had gathered on the deck and pointed their guns at them. P.S. Hammer 3 is not fun. I returned Hammer 2nd. Haha. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Battle. Just as the High Elves army left the barracks and launched an attack on Rohan's army, Aang also led the Silver Mist Hunters to sneak into the water grass. Through the dense water grass, Aang could see the few remaining defenders in the Asur camp, and more than a dozen eagle claw crossbows were shooting at the desolate fortress. A Silver Mist Hunter couldn't hold back his inner desire to hunt, and came to Aang excitedly and asked, "Aang, they left the barracks, let's go up and destroy their crossbow positions?" "No, we haven't found the White Lions in the White Lions army yet, which means they are in ambush." Aang looked at the Asur barracks with lax defense cautiously. Logically, there should be at least 100 or 200 people left here as guards, but he only saw dozens of spearmen. As a shadow veteran who has lived for nearly 1,000 years, Aang has participated in countless battles with the Althuan army, and has a good understanding of the tactics and methods of each elven kingdom. For example, the elven army from Terenlock is better at driving high-speed chariots, the nobles of Lothern use bows and spears and fight with the sea guards, and the Cherith army of the White Lion is very good at close combat, using their axes and lions that are still sharp after thousands of years of inheritance to break through the enemy's line. Aang does not intend to expose his presence too early. Rohan's order is to wait for an opportunity, so he should hide like a venomous snake and launch a fatal attack at the critical moment. Rohan army formation catapults ready. Because the deck of the Black Ark was tilted up, the High Elf army did not realize that they had rushed into the range of hundreds of catapults. Looking at the Asur army getting closer and closer, Rohan's peeping face showed a smug smile. He directly waved the halberd in his hand and signaled to the observer on the Black Ark. Bang! Hundreds of crossbows roared instantly, and the sound of the bowstrings being relaxed was as loud as thunder. Even the two sides fighting in the desolate fortress in the distance subconsciously looked towards the coast. Since all the Reaper crossbows were equipped with anti-infantry shotgun crossbows, the crossbows flew towards the High Elves army like flowers scattered by the sky. The Asur soldiers who were charging had never seen such a posture before, and they stopped in fear and used their shields to block it. However, the Reaper's crossbows were not easy to block. For a moment, nearly 100 unlucky High Elf warriors were pierced through the body by the sudden attack. Alastair roared and swung his battle axe directly, splitting the crossbow arrows shot at him, which made Rohan secretly stunned. What kind of Althuan Superman is this? The White Lion guards did not lose too much in Rohan's carefully planned attack. The White Lion skins on their bodies and the battle axes wielded in their hands were very good at resisting the shooting of the crossbows. But the spearmen and rangers were not so lucky. Just as Tarach's shield could not stop the dragon's flames, Asur's shield could not withstand the 1-meter-long crossbow arrows that fell from the sky. Looking at the hundreds of elves who lost their combat effectiveness in an instant, Alastair showed a ferocious face, waving his giant axe, and rushed towards the Rohan army. Because of his arrogance, he did not lead the archers in this attack, so he had to rush to the two armies in time to prevent the advantage of the crossbow from being brought into play. Rohan looked at the Asur army charging at full speed and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Judging from the current distance, he should be able to shoot another round. Crossbowmen. Shoot at those with shields. The black sharp crossbowmen pulled the trigger with a smile on their faces and used their superb archery skills to shoot crossbow arrows into the gaps in the armor of their compatriots. Looking at the Asur two-handed macho men who were constantly shot and fell to the ground, wailing, Rohan couldn't help but touch the shield beside him and sighed. Fortunately, I'm a coward. Even if I hold a halberd, I will carry a shield with me, otherwise I will probably end up like this. Under the cover of the comrades who kept falling to the ground around him, Alastair and the White Lion Guards finally arrived in front of Rohan's army under the rain of arrows. Die. Alastair's angry blow directly split the shield in the hand of a dark swordsman. Before the Durachi soldier could react, Alastair kicked him into the crowd with a left kick, bringing down several Durachi soldiers. Seeing this, the surrounding dark swordsmen hurriedly swung their rapiers to chop at Alastair, but the defense of the heavy iron armor and white lion skin was far beyond their imagination. The other White Lion Guards were not to be outdone. The battle axes in their hands were like can openers, easily chiseling a gap in the defense line of the dark swordsman. White Lion can beat the great swordsman, but it seems to be an old rumor that he can't. Looking at the frontline troops that were constantly losing people, Rohan's face showed no expression, but continued to give orders. Silver Mist Guards, take over. Pull out the rapid-fire crossbows. Drachi. The 4 teams of Silver Mist Guards raised their halberds and began to advance towards the battlefield, where the battle was going on. At the same time, on the deck of the Black Ark, that was difficult for the High Elves to detect, several crossbows engraved with tiger heads were aimed at the two sides fighting below. Alastair, who was constantly hacking and killing in the crowd, immediately noticed Rohan, who was giving orders, and the silver-armored warriors around him, and couldn't help whispering, "Soldiers of Iris? No. I didn't expect that there would be a dreadlord among the Durachi who would believe in the Lady of the Mist." Although the belief in the Lady of the Mist was only spread in the Iris region, most of the High Elves had a good impression of this mysterious goddess who could guide lost ships. After noticing Alastair who was looking at him, Rohan looked at the other party's bloody battle axe and pointed the halberd in his hand at the other party in a provocation. "This bastard." Alastair licked his lips. "Who is he?" "He is the dignified White Lion, General Alastair, and now he is provoked by an unknown person!" Exclamation mark. However, the current situation does not allow him to be angry, because as more and more Silver Mist Guards join the battle, the casualties of the White Lion Guards also begin to rise. At the same time, the muzzle of the crossbow cannon is also aimed at the assembled High Elf army, relying on good shooting angles and accuracy, and began to shoot at those unlucky Asur. Looking at the High Elves who are in a bitter battle, Rohan also mixed into the fighting crowd with a shield on his back, and he also felt itchy. For a while, more and more High Elves found that there seemed to be an invisible wretched figure around them quietly shooting. With the help of the Mistwalker feature, Rohan hid in the crowd like a Despicable Ratman, and from time to time used his halberd to poke the enemy's exposed vital points, making the High Elves miserable. I don't know if the Mist Lady thought Rohan's attack method was too vulgar. Just when Rohan was about to kill a White Lion Guard with his back exposed by sneak attack, a huge axe suddenly poked his halberd away. TSK, trouble. Found you. You insidious rat. Looking at Alastair covered in blood, Rohan couldn't help but sigh. He had been sneak attacking for so long, but he didn't expect to be discovered. Then let's fight. Chapter 50, Fire Dragon's Sorrow. Looking at the axe blade that was bigger than his head, Rohan hurriedly pushed back, and at the same time, he continued to attack the opponent with the distance advantage of the halberd. Alastair would naturally not let Rohan pull away. He used the giant axe to resist Rohan's attack, while constantly approaching Rohan. After finding an opportunity, Rohan attached the magic power in his body to the halberd, and the faint blue fluorescence drew a circular arc and chopped on Alastair's giant axe. However, the trick that had always worked in the past did not work, but only pushed the opponent back a few steps. Alastair looked at Rohan's blue glowing halberd with some surprise, and asked, "Drachi's male warlock?" "No, it contains the power of the elven god. Lady of the Mist actually favors a dark elf dreadlord." Among the gods in the sky, only the god of magic Hot and Lady of the Mist Radria have blue divine power, but because of the language, Malekith could not allow Male Durachi to learn magic. Combined with the silver mist guards he had seen earlier, Alastair quickly deduced the source of Rohan's power, and could not help but be secretly surprised. As the patron saint of lost things and travelers, he should have nothing to do with Druki. Little guy, tell me your name. I'll tell you my uncle. Timo, isn't he just a few thousand years older than me? Rohan took advantage of the situation, and swung several heavy blows in succession. Alastair responded calmly, while paying attention to the situation around him. Due to the serious underestimation of the long-range firepower of Rohan's army, more and more high elves were shot by crossbows, and pushed to the back helplessly. Although the shield wall composed of spearmen was still supporting with a solid armor and shield, as time passed, Druki, who had the advantage in numbers, would completely eat up the troops he brought. Alastair suddenly used his magic power, scaring Rohan into defending himself hastily, but found that the other party had shamelessly escaped, leaving only a few White Lion guards to surround him. Alastair, who had withdrawn from the battle, took out a horn from his bosom, took a deep breath and blew it. Woo! The deafening sound of the horn immediately blew away the faint mist on the battlefield. The high elf nobles in the distance looked over, and were surprised to find that Alastair's White Lion Legion was actually at a disadvantage. Quick! Ask the dragon to cover the White Lion general. Turn the Eagle Claw crossbow, aim at the Black Ark and fire. Let the White Lion war group attack the flank. Their master needs help now. The White Lion war group had already rushed out of the woods. With their extremely high IQ, they had already rushed to the flank of the battlefield when the horn sounded, ready to launch an attack. The Eagle Claw crossbow was also pushed out of the military camp and came to an open space not far from the water grass, ready to shoot at the Black Ark at any time. After confirming that the crossbow had been enchanted, the gunner began to adjust the shooting angle and aimed at the Black Ark and said, "Ready. Up. Enemy attack." Where? The silver mist hunter who had been hiding in the water grass was madly tilting the magic crossbow arrows in his hands. Hundreds of crossbow arrows with blue tails instantly pierced the chests of these unfortunate gunners. After shooting all the crossbow arrows in his hands, Ange drew out the long sword with blue light and rushed out of the grass, attacking the camp guards who were hurriedly organizing the defense line. The situation on the White Lion side was not good either. These agile war lions tried to attack the crossbowmen with weaker melee ability, but the crossbowmen were tightly protected by the fierce spearmen. Some White Lions who smelled the blood and went crazy tried to attack Rohan's army, but the dozen White Lion corpses left at the feet of the fierce spearmen were enough for them to give up this year. Roar. After repelling several White Lion guards, Rohan turned his gaze to the sky. His face changed drastically, and he hurriedly shouted, "Dragon!" The flame sun dragon that was originally hovering over the desolate fortress had already flown towards the Black Ark at some point, casting a shadow that covered half of the battlefield. Although this flame sun dragon was only a dozen meters long, it was still quite deadly for Rohan, who had no air defense means except the crossbow. Some black sharp crossbowmen heard Rohan's shouting and raised their crossbows to try to shoot the giant dragon in the air and complete the feat of slaying the dragon. However, the dragon only needed to wave its wings to blow away the crossbow arrows shot at it, and some of the crossbow arrows scattered on it could not penetrate its fine scales. Rohan threw down his halberd and ran madly towards the Black Ark. Looking at the giant dragon that was about to spit out its breath, he gathered all the magic power in his body into the ring on his right hand. He didn't know whether Ladria's blessing could withstand the dragon's breath, but he couldn't just watch this lizard turn the Black Ark into a sea of fire. Since the magic power in Rohan's body was slowly increasing every day, the magic shield containing all of Rohan's magic power was now as blue as a 1,000-year-old ice crystal. The sun dragon tilted its head. Since it was awakened by the war, it was only a child over 1,000 years old and couldn't understand what this shield floating in the air was for. But it knew that its responsibility was to destroy the strange black ship under its feet, so it still opened its mouth and started to breathe at the Black Ark. Hiss so heavy, Rohan could feel that his magic shield was like being hit by a heavy hammer. Although it failed to destroy Rohan's magic shield, it still made the magic power that was originally full in Rohan's body instantly empty. Taking advantage of the opportunity of the magic shield to block the breath, Rohan quickly came to the Black Ark and ordered the gunners who were loading, prepare standard shells, aim at the dragon's wings and shoot, and start fire cover with the crossbows. Rohan believed that the anti-aircraft firepower composed of nearly 100 crossbows was enough for them to drink a pot, not to mention the young dragon in the sky, even if it was an adult dragon or even a giant dragon. The fire dragon's breath lasted for half a minute. Seeing that his throat was hoarse and the magic shield that had not been destroyed, the hot-tempered fire dragon flew up and hit it with his body. Fire. Rohan directly put away the shield, allowing the surrounding crossbows to pour out their firepower wantonly. For a while, hundreds of armor-piercing crossbow arrows pierced the fire dragon that could not make a turn due to the dive. Roar. A trace of panic flashed in the fire dragon's eyes. He had never encountered a situation where he was targeted by hundreds of crossbows since he was born, so he subconsciously spread his wings and wanted to fly away. However, this action exposed the fragile wing membrane. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.